I can't believe how much I come in right at the exact time, no matter what happens in the world. Springtime in Salt Lake, Utah.
Kind of.
Which means 3 straight days of blizzard for us. Let's see. Who do we got here? We got Jared, super life coach. Flip only has fact-based opinions. And I'm a linguist here.
Linguist here.
All right, let's see it.
All right, let's see. I got a clip with that going. How much of that did you guys get to watch? I don't know if we should give it a second here for people. What's Blue Meanie say here?
Which thing are we talking about?
All the things, man. There was so much this week. I can't even think.
I don't think I watched too much. I don't know. I know I listened to an hour or two of Mormon bullshit, but it all just blends together.
What odds are you offering? Maybe a parlay Delin buy into 10 or actually transition? Oh,
I'm not sure. Delin seems to think that his like goofy Mormon wholesome dad image is worth pursuing still. So once he decides that's not the case, then he'll definitely come out as bi. Sure.
What's up, Maple Lake Mountain? What's up?
It is the easy one because like you just have to say it.
I know.
And like there's no haircut, there's no shirt, there's no symbol.
That's why every single.
That's
why every married woman in the world now is like, guess what? I'm bisexual. Aren't I brave for coming out?
I play in bands around Salt Lake, and I know several of them there's couples in the band, and whenever June comes around, I guess that's the month, the couple announces they were bi, and they've been bi all along. But we all know that means, I mean, they're not going to go like
they're monogamously
they're monogamously bi. They've just wanted to come out and say they're part of it, much like what was her name who did that? Exmolex.
And it was the funniest thing too. She came out and basically was like, I groomed myself. She's like, I didn't even consider being bi until TikTok was like, do you wear plaid Converse sneakers? That's a sign you might be bi. She's like, oh my God, I never considered I might be bi before, but I do wear Converse sneakers that are plaid.
A former coworker one day was talking about one of the clients. He's like, oh, he's gay. And I'm like, dude, I don't think he's gay. What makes you think he's gay? And he's like, come on, yellow sneakers. I'm like, I don't think that's one of the things. And then I told this story to our gay friend, and he's like, oh no, yellow sneakers was all the way up until last month, but it's off the list now. Not gay.
Oh man, it's so funny because so much of that social emotional learning stuff, what they're doing is trying to give kids some sort of queer identity, even if they aren't queer. If we remember, what's his name, Bloomberg, or no, it was one of the Cuomo's daughters that came out as asexual, just like the Lynn's. Both his daughters are supposedly.
His kids are trans.
Well, they're not trans. His kids are asexual and something like sapiosexual. What are those ones? Those ones that are just I don't want to date right now.
Sapiosexuals. No, sapiosexual is one of the funniest ones because it's pretty roundly rejected even by the acronym community, because that one just means I'm attracted to intelligent people. Mm-hmm. And it's just a snazzy way to claim that you're smart.
It's a humble brag.
It's like it's a humble brag. I'm only attracted to smart people. Oh, he must be real smart.
So before anybody comes in, did you guys see this whole thing go down?
Yeah.
Start off on this sucker. Did you see this flip?
What? No.
So, okay, well, here's the initial video.
Garlic, onion powder. Where does that come from? Dehydrated onion? Let's take a look at the spice rub. Dehydrated garlic, onion, and bell pepper.
I sauteed those bell peppers along with my onion and garlic.
What is so funny is if I had just doused my chicken in this rub alone, the seasoning police would be out of my comments. They wouldn't even be in there. But the second it's fresh garlic or fresh onion or fresh bell pepper, it's automatically not seasoning.
Seasoning Bay is here.
You haven't heard about this flip?
No.
Oh, this was great. She got so much hate because it's the white people don't season their food thing. And they got mad at her for not seasoning their food because she just put salt on it. But then she's going over the list of all the shit. She's like, no, you wanted me to put onion powder on it. I put fresh diced onions on it.
And
So some people are saying that this single video might have started the second Civil War.
Yeah,
because
that's the whole video. There's nothing more to it. But she's just a cook, and like some people came into her DMs saying that, oh, white people don't ever season their food. And so she was pointing out that seasoning is just condensed versions of the stuff that she's putting in her food, and that it's salt. That, well, everybody took that as a
this is one of those, did the world start yesterday? Like, what do you know anything about planet Earth and how things work? Like,
the latest viral internet sensation to be turned into a racist 4chan meme stems from an ostensibly innocuous video in defense of using fresh herbs and vegetables as seasoning. Why, you may ask, would a topic so benign become so racialized and so divisive? Today we're going to take a look at that, the history of this meme about white people seasoning their food or lack thereof, as well as some of the best counterexamples, if you will, some of the culinary practices to come out of Africa in order to change.
This is iHypocrite.
This is iHypocrite. He has a pretty good channel. One of the interesting things about him is he's got like,
I know I've seen his stuff before.
He's got like 100,000 followers, and he tried to submit his name over to Steven Crowder, like saying, Steven Crowder, you say you're giving chances to up and coming YouTubers, like give me a shot. You know what I mean? And he says Crowder just never got back to him. Crowder finally announced his new lineup, and it's Nick DiPaolo and Brian Callen. I'm like, well, those are your up and comers, Crowder. Like, I knew Nick DiPaolo and Brian Callen when I was in junior high, literally. Like, I knew both of them from real mainstream television.
Big risk you're taking there, Crowder.
I knew Brian Callen before I knew who Joe Rogan was. And I knew who I followed Nick DiPaolo all the way back when he was on Tough Crowd with Colin Quinn, and then with Louis C.K. and all that stuff all those years. I like both of them. I think they're both pretty funny. They have some different strange things. Like Brian Callen and all of his goofy friends, they went through a long history of drama of each one of them kind of getting Me Too'd, and then they all threw each other under the bus like one at a time. He was on that Fighter and the Kid. Did you ever see that?
No.
He was on one of Joe Rogan's MMA friends. What's his name? Brandon Schaub. And he started becoming a comedian because Joe Rogan suggested he became a comedian. And he wasn't a very good comedian, but he still started doing that stuff with this. And he's also one of the stuff, if you ever want to go down some weird rabbit hole, follow what's happening with like Bobby Lee too, and that stuff. Because Bobby Lee's wife has done some wacky doodah crazy stuff in his life if you want to go down a really crazy rabbit hole. And Brendan Shaw was in the middle of all that. Anyway, did you hear about Crystalia? Crystalia got in trouble and got canceled because supposedly he was getting the DMs of underage women and stuff like that. But then it came out that he never ever met up with any one of them. It was just messages back and forth on DMs and stuff like that. And then Brian Callen got canceled because he supposedly cheated on his wife. But the thing is, like, each one of them, one at a time, got some sort of accusation against them, which is fine because each one of them kind of turned out to be a bit. But what was upsetting about the three of them is they each kind of virtue signaled and threw the other under the bus. Like let's pretend it's us three. Like each three of us gets like some sort of false accusation, and then, you know, one at a time we go, I do not support or stand by this, like to save our own butts, you know. So
like Adult Swim with Justin Roiland.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, Justin Roiland.
See, that's because if those DMs, if those messages he sent to kids are legitimate, like that's still like there's no crime.
No, I know that's what they keep. People keep saying like hire him back right now, and I'm like, well, I mean, we know that he's been exonerated. I don't know if that means that he's innocent.
Yeah.
So all that stuff that came up, but I don't think it'd ever be hard in this world if you just followed the rule. Like all the way back, we were talking about with John DeLinz, the null hypothesis and the way you're supposed to take it. Innocent until proven guilty. If any of my friends came out accused of something, it would not be hard. Like the whole Me Too era flipped that on its head and said you were supposed to denounce first. And I don't know why that ever flipped, because 100% of my friends, even if they were serial killers, I would not bat an eye to defend them first because I don't know any different.
Yeah.
And then if something else came out, proved like, holy shit, wow. And I wouldn't even have to have this sort of feeling of, oh my gosh, I need to apologize that I didn't notice that. No, Flip has never given me any sort of hint that he's a serial killer. And so, no, I do not. If it turns out Flip's a serial killer, I owe no one an apology. You know?
He's a serial misogynist.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
So the Anna Kasparian thing, Make Believe Mountain, was
I don't know that.
Up. She tweeted out. She said, "I'm a woman. Please don't ever refer to me as a person with a uterus, birthing person, or person who menstruates. How do people not realize how degrading this is? You can support the transgender community without doing this shit." And it's funny that she does that because, like, that's some pretty turfy rhetoric there. But she'll walk it back.
Use the language of the movement.
Give her a minute. She'll walk it back. But she also, that's the funny part is she uses the term cis women a lot, which is pretty much the same thing as woman with a woman. Uterus my favorite, vulva bodied person. That's my
Christopher just noticed the linguist here thing. I should pull that up because we're gonna get. I did make a highlight reel of the Lynn's stuff this week, even though I didn't get anywhere near close to all of it. But
man, I took a 3-hour nap and I'm still sleepy.
A 3-hour nap. Let's see. Present. Share screen.
Share presents.
Damn it, Canyon.
Oh, look, he brought data.
No, that's something else. I brought the data.
You brought dogma.
Data. His data is all words. His data is words, and his words are mathematical. Don't you know he's an MIT professor?
Well, all of his opinions there's no biases because all of his opinions are entirely fact-based.
So
wait, all lives just announced that of himself.
All lives matter, because that's what he's talking about. All lives matter is overwhelmingly used to challenge and marginalize Black Lives Matter. No, it is a response to. It's not a challenge. Let me read that loud
if anybody's not looking at the screen. Linguist here. Oh, somebody said, this is an absolute joke. Really, ADL saying all lives matter is considered racist. From KSL.com article.
Yeah, so that's what Dan's responding to.
Let's go ahead and read it.
Yeah, so it's overwhelming. Linguist here. Like, what a weird way. It's like, so wait, that makes you morally correct?
He does that all the time. Like he's going to interpret words for us constantly.
It's overwhelmingly
I'm going to tell you what everybody means.
It's overwhelmingly used to challenge and marginalize Black Lives Matter. No, it is not. And so reifies the systemic power asymmetries the latter needs to confront. No, the systemic power asymmetries are an article of faith of your worldview, Dan. That's racist. No, it's not. You need to stop thoughtlessly protecting your dogmatism and identity politics and just learn about racism. And I bet you that somebody sent him wind of how much he uses rhetorical prophylaxis and he stopped himself from using it.
I bet he did, yeah.
But
other people were noticing it too.
How does seriously, how does all lives matter marginalize Black people?
Well, this is what I've been like. I want to file a bunch of phrases under the "you know what I mean," because that's the thing. Like, you know what I mean with like all lives matter. I don't mean that Black lives do not matter. When I say all lives matter, I'm saying, look, you're trying to there's a difference. It's a Mutt and Bailey thing. You know that.
Yeah, which I said down below. I see my response to him, which nobody ever notices. I wonder if he has me muted.
Your comment's just in the way of, before the president's comment is in the way of your comment.
I got to go back to the screen. How do I? Oh, come on.
I just lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, it's not like Black Lives Matter didn't come out with a message, you know, like as soon as the phrase came out, the message was there with it. And we know from the beginning what it was actually about. And it wasn't just about advocating for black people. We know that. Like, and why do you think that, Dan, why do you think you can lie to me about what the Black Lives Matter movement has always said itself is about? You know, like it's
well, one of the
that,
Mott and Bailey games is that there's just the idea black people's lives matter.
Yeah, it's just the phrase
Lowercase.
face value, because that's anybody with a brain will be like, well, obviously, I think that. And if you just mix up the words a little bit, they freak the fuck out. If they say, "Do you think Black Lives matter?" and you say, "I definitely believe that the lives of black people matter."
Yeah,
They'll be like,
exactly,
yeah, but say it my way because that's
No,
important. Well, then it's no longer the mutt, man. You've retreated.
Jared, it's
I like
it's for the same reason you can't change the order of the words in the sacrament prayer.
the
The magic doesn't work if you say it wrong.
But at least one of them admits it's magic.
So I usually, like, one of the things when I'm arguing with people, I say, "Did you capitalize Black Lives Matter or not?" But I like how he capitalized one of the words and not all the words. So
but he said
that, like, medium. Is he just saying the idea, or is he saying the organization, the Marxist organization? That Sargon and those guys pulled up this lady in Britain who's going around pushing critical race theory in Britain, and she makes sure to say, "I am not affiliated with Black Lives Matter," which they all do now because the word's out that Black Lives Matter just launders money. And that's
Stole all the money. I mean, that is one of my things that I like to ask people, like, you know, because like millions of private donations, billions in corporate donations. Where are the community outreach programs? Where are the social workers that you promised? Where, you know, the culturally changed social workers? Where are the first responders that aren't evil cops that just show up to kill people when white people order execution summarily? Where are they? Like, Black Lives Matter got the money. Where is the money been spent? You know, it's like, and obviously we know.
Yeah, where's one single scholarship? You know, but this is one of the deals.
Scholarship, Where is one clinic? Where have they founded any small business owners to open up bodegas that sell fresh fruit and produce in the so-called food deserts? Where the fuck are they?
And the only things that we have found that they spent money on was these different mansions, and then paying money to these artists who weren't artists. They were friends and family of the people of the ownership of the group. And even like the state of California was going after them, the freaking state of California. Yeah. But what's
I searched charity work done by BLM, and the first thing I found was all of the grants given to BLM.
No, not charity for, charity by.
And it's funny because it's on the it's the Black Lives Matter Transparency Center, their website. We're gonna be very transparent about who's giving us money.
What's so funny about that is that, like, so many people, not a lot of people, because way more people know now, but so many people knew before George Floyd. They knew from Ferguson that this had already happened. They'd already heard from Brown's, what's his name, Michael Brown's family. Michael Brown's family had already complained about them not forwarding or passing on a dime. And same thing happened. Breonna Taylor's family came out talking about them not forwarding a dime. And the thing is, like, a lot of people have gotten off of this, and Dan McClellan's behind the freaking 8 ball because, you know, just like Mormons are always 20 years behind stuff, ex-Mormons are always 20 years behind stuff. It's usually one of my jokes, the things I notice, because, like, every time I listen to John Larson, I go, you still think it's 2007 atheism? You still think that the postmodern thing didn't happen at all?
Oh, dude, that was the funniest part about watching that Holland thing, that panel that they did, was watching they made John Dehlin look like a person. You know, the level of NPC bullshit that was coming out of those students' mouths. Like, he seemed like a normal and likable guy in comparison, and he could barely keep up with them. He just kept, like, they would go on one of their long, stupid, woke tangents.
They're trained commissars.
Oh fuck. Marginalized, privilege and power. He's just, like, throwing shit out there because he can't keep up with them. I'm like, no, John, this is the most likable you've ever been. And they're walking circles around you.
So here's Jacob, who said that he'd like to talk to him about Thomas Sowell, not realizing what a dead end he just walked into. That's Kevin. I blocked his thing because he's got, like, a secret name on there. Oh, I guess I didn't block it. Oh, well.
Block it.
How dare you challenge this linguist? Don't you know he's just going to point out your blithe rhetorical prophylaxis as if he responds, which he usually doesn't when you cite Sowell. And I said, thank linguist. You linguisted that. Do linguists learn about Mott's and Baileys?
I've had exactly one direct interaction with Dan McClellan. It was on his Facebook. I linked Thomas Sowell. I was immediately blocked. That is my whole personal interaction with that guy.
Yeah, I got blocked on Facebook. I came in hot just about critical race theory, and then I called him an expert at Dungeons and Dragons rules. And then he blocked
It makes me think of like I saw it once very vaguely. It was that really shitty Adam Sandler movie, The Ridiculous Six. I never watched the whole movie, but there was this part.
I forgot that existed.
There's this part where they're playing baseball, but they're playing it with the guy that invented baseball, and like he keeps just making up rules as he goes because everybody else is better at the game than him. Like he accidentally runs past first, and they're like, "You're out," because I tagged you. Like, no, you can run past first, but just first. You can't do it on the other base, just that one.
Yeah, Calvin balling it as he goes.
Look at this. University of Helsinki gives Greta Thunberg a doctorate of theology, so now she's as expert as is Dan McClellan.
So appropriate. You know, she's exactly as much as a scholar as Dan McClellan now.
Jared says, I trust her theology takes exactly as much as I trust Dr. Dan McClellan, PhD, IQ 300.
See, I just wonder, like, is Dan just boiling? Because think of the money Dan had to spend on his degree.
Think of the money Dan's parents had to spend on his degree. Where do I have that? I like that meme of Homer saying, "I've had it with all of you. I'm going to clown college."
Yeah.
I was going to make a meme of Dan McClellan's head of that and put it up today, but I couldn't resist John Lynn giving me a soy face, just a perfect soy face. Like
sorry, because I'm thinking about this Greta Thunberg thing. Do they explain it? Like they're saying, like, well, she's obviously a spiritual leader in the realm of religion. So
I know it's funny.
No, it's not religion. It's just like what's the bull crappiest degree that we have? I know.
It's hilarious that it was theology, though.
So, like, aren't they like? Because that's things like, if there are any serious theologians in that college, aren't they pissed off? Like you're diluting the value of that degree. Like what the hell does it mean to be a theologian if Greta Thunberg is one?
Well, it's just kind of like when Harvard or whatever revokes Bill Cosby's honorary doctorate. Like, oh no, I mean the not real doctor is now officially not a not real doctor.
I just because I don't know, the whole honorary thing is. I mean, I made the joke a long time ago that, like, if you get an honorary degree, does it come with $180,000 of honorary debt? Like, because it's just so silly. I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, it's dumb, but I'm sure.
But this is extra dumb, you know, like because there are some people where you kind of figure, like, you know, like. Guy never went to college, but like built rockets. Like, what's his name? The guy that L. Ron Hubbard hung out with. His name escapes me right now.
Oh, we got credentials.
The guy with magic and shit. But like, you know, like that guy might deserve an honorary degree in rocketry because the guy fucking invented rocketry despite not having a degree. You know, whatever. Jack Parsons. Is that his name?
Do I deserve an honorary degree in theology since I'm really, really good at saying nonsense?
Yeah. Because that's things like, I mean, that's what's a life coach but a self-appointed honorary degree? Like it's not even honorary. It's not even from an honorable society. You just tell yourself, I am this good at this.
I always imagine because anytime we say life coach now, I think of that Kyle Bishop guy, and every time I see him, he's on Nuance's channel, and I have to imagine that she's just like, I don't know. I guess she's not rolling her eyes. I guess she thinks it's all real and normal.
She's taking notes.
You saw that she brought
this dude
him.
has the dumbest takes. He got to hang out with Stephen Hassan.
She brought him on with the
He's got a decent following on TikTok, I guess. But
that guy goes back. I've been following that guy since the middle 2000s.
No, I'm talking about Kyle Bishop.
This guy.
Yeah, Hassan goes way
Oh,
back.
the Hassan guy, yeah, but no, this guy, Flip. I'll
No,
pull
no.
him up here. Let's see.
Steve Hassan, but like, yeah, I've known about him since way back in the early days of Scientology.
This guy,
on the
did you
internet.
see that? You remember the we made
Yeah.
fun of this guy once, this life coach dude, and
Jeez, I don't even
they
remember.
brought the bike model guy on with this life coach. It's so funny. Like he comes to Utah, and John DeLynn puts him on with Zelf, the life coach, and Kara, the life coach, and this guy, the life coach.
Beyond God and Religion. That's his site name. Like,
we're gonna get free of all these cults, man.
I mean, I guess that's the thing, though. It's like, that's where's the money? Who's paying out? I guess it's other religions like Thrive.
I mean, people like Kara, I guess. Your life coaches are people like that guy and Sam, and your life coach clients are people like Kara, who are somehow naive enough to think that those life coaches have anything valuable about life to say.
I was joking that we were going to start a life coaching club called the Super Best Friends Club.
Super Best Friends
and everything. Credentials are bad. If you get a credential, you're out. Let's see.
I threw my hands up in the air the other day and told my wife, I don't know, I guess maybe life coaches, I guess you're maybe just as likely to get a life coach who gives you decent advice as you are a therapist, because life coaches, at least there's an element of chance to it, and therapists, there's like a legal obligation to give you terrible advice.
Yeah, they're more likely they've had to jump through Blue Church.
Yeah, like a life coach could potentially tell you, I don't know, maybe don't cut your dick off. A therapist will go to fucking jail for that.
I could actually become a life coach and actually teach people just how to exercise and eat clean and play the banjo. And that's something. Whereas in the other place, from John DeLynn's therapy world, I got to teach them how to declare themselves toxic.
Yeah, John DeLynn diagnosed himself and Margie today. Did you see that? Or not on that mental health one? He's talking to the woman who's bipolar, and he's like, oh yeah, mental illness is everywhere. Like mine in Mormonism was being overworked, and Margie, you had anxiety. And like
everybody's got a diagnosis.
You overworked,
now.
And that's a mental illness. But I'll bet you $1,000 if I asked him, is gender dysphoria a mental illness? He'd say that's actually super bigoted. And back in 2015, the WHO declared gender dysphoria no longer a mental illness. Like, okay,
the only dysphoria that we say go for it, go all the way, man.
Yes, absolutely starve yourself. You are fat.
Yeah. Look at that. Look at that belly.
I don't care if you want to be a New Age hippie. I don't care if you want to go meditate on an island until you die and think that you transcended and by your magical thoughts you saved humanity. I don't care as long as it's individualist. But when you start saying that it's your job to save humanity by getting all of humanity on board and it gets very collectivist, I start to care a lot. Weirdos, seekers, hippies. I'm not in with this. I don't like it, honestly. I don't want to be around it, but I don't mind that those people exist.
Tolerance.
Go meditate in the cave, fine. But when it starts to generate cults, it becomes an issue. So especially when it starts to generate a world cult on the belief that unless everybody participates, then it's not going to work, you have a really big problem. So when the belief starts to be that humans only ascend when all of humanity ascends, in other words, if it's collectivist, we're all going to heaven or none of us are. And that's a belief that falls out of this kind of look at Hermeticism, especially when we get to Hegel and Marx, because their goal isn't to go to heaven, it's to make heaven here. It's to turn the world into heaven. So if everybody here doesn't play, it's not going to work.
All right. Yeah. And I think one of the comments that one of the panelists made was we can't fight hate with hate. And so we're not going to.
Was that DeLynn commenting on that clip, or did you just?
No. This is
I was going to say, like, there's no way he watches. You edit this together, okay?
It's not going to work.
All right. Yeah. And I think one of the comments that one of the panelists made was we can't fight hate with hate. And so we're not going to be hateful in today's presentation.
All right, let's see it.
I'm going to start editing those in everywhere.
All I can think when I hear somebody say we can't fight hate with hate is maybe the worst movie line I've ever heard in The Last Jedi, when Rose stops Finn from completing his beautiful character arc, potentially beautiful, but maybe a little played out character arc where he sacrifices himself. Nope, she stops him and she goes, "We can't win this war by killing those we hate, but by saving what we love." And like right in as the backdrop is the cannon that he was about to destroy, decimating their final base, their final safe haven.
But also, I mean, like, there's so many damn things wrong with that movie and that scene, but also just like, okay, even if they played it out like that, like, they hit each other at like a combined speed of like 300 miles an hour. How the hell did it survive? Like,
he's like,
okay, Neil deGrasse Tyson, let me play my movies.
I just hate that happens. It's almost as stupid as the B-17 bombing run in episode 8, whatever that was.
That's the same movie.
Oh, wait, was it Last Jedi?
That's the same movie.
Oh, because wait,
it's almost
Rise
as
of
stupid
Skywalker
as
is 9. Oh, that's right, because 8 is the one with the that is the same dumb movie.
And it was gonna go down in history as the dumbest Star Wars movie. And then J.J. Abrams was like, hold my fucking beer.
Yeah,
I still haven't watched any of the last two, and I can't do it. I'm not.
You have to watch Rise of Skywalker. You have to. It's
9 went
insane.
in and out of
man.
my
I
brain.
can't watch Ryan Johnson's. I can't watch.
It's not Ryan Johnson. That's
no, that's the 9.
I know, but I'd have to watch the Ryan Johnson one to get there.
Yeah,
I mean, it just see that the Ryan Johnson one stuck in my brain more because it was so much more stupid. But
it was
9,
like a well put together piece of shit. 9 was
I watched
it was really
I watched
bad.
7 and I thought they could pull out of it, but then they didn't. And then when I thought about it in hindsight how stupid it was to kill Han and not put the old 3 back together again, and then how stupid it was to not have like a moment, and then just like Mark Hamill complained about, like it would have been a perfect time for him to appear when that lightsaber was rattling, but no, he just wasn't there. And then the whole idea of him just throwing the thing I can't do it.
It's
really
dumb.
I'm Star Wars
on top
Jewish.
Of how bad the story is, like in the Red Letter Media review of episode 9, there's one of my favorite moments in Red Letter Media where, like, because they're complaining about just how much happens in that movie, and it all happens so fast, and it just goes bang, 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 like characters come and go like nothing. And Mike Stiklasa like wishes like there was an old man button that just slowed the movie down, where it's like, this token will get you onto the Imperial cruiser. You can take it now. Because like in the movie, this scene happens and it's just boom, boom, so fast that like you don't even remember it happened. It's so bad.
Troy, that's Troy.
I like watching those just for the bad, like, oh, there we go. Because I enjoy watching terrible filmmaking for terrible filmmaking's sake.
Oh yeah. I watched that one. I watched that one because I read all the leaks, and I was like, if even half of these are true, it's going to be fucking amazing. Well, nearly all of them were true.
And what does that mean about the security situation in Hollywood and at Disney? Because
I could recite to you.
Were true.
I listened to so much about each one of those. I could tell you what happens in the movie. Totally, I can totally tell you. I can't watch them. I can't do it.
Hey, Troy. Jared said your game's too easy.
Well, you got to put it on hard. I keep trying to go to the stores to buy a PS5, and I can't find one anywhere.
Really?
I got the order online. I've gone to like 4 days. I don't have a ton of time, but every time I go to a store, and I've gone to different Walmarts and different.
Troy probably has a garage full of them.
Those are my two beefs. My two beefs with Hogwarts Legacy was that it was too easy, and 2, there was just not nearly enough transphobia in it as I was promised there was going to be. I thought I was going to be able to. I was
told that it was a metaphor about how goblins were Jews, and it turned out to be
That's another thing. There was an element of liberal individualism where you judge the goblins on the content of their character and not their race. So that was disappointing. I was promised some.
I just want to see this Miss Garlic lady, and that's all I care.
Miss Garlic is hot as fuck.
Did you turn up the difficulty? Asked Troy.
Did you say because I thought you said that it was on the hardest level, and you still found
I started a second playthrough.
That sounds perfect for me because I don't have time to get super good at stuff like a like I used to get good at what were they the Souls games. Like I'm a little
Souls
bit
game.
afraid of Elden Ring because I just don't have the time to get great at it. I couldn't get through Sekiro because I didn't have time. I sit there and if there's a game that I have to get so good at, I feel bad. I'm like, I should be putting this time into banjo.
I guess I had put down Elden Ring to start playing Hogwarts. So
Wait, nobody will pay you $50 a night to play Elden Ring down at the bar?
No.
Even if you're real good?
There's no such thing as
to stop playing the
labor.
banjo. So. Yeah, you should see how people go nuts for the banjo in the bars, man. They really go crazy for it.
Yeah, that's why I need to get a hurdy-gurdy to love it.
They would. I learned I was an anti-Semite via the games press.
Oh my God! Welcome, Troy. Twinsies.
I found out I was an
anti-Semite.
alt-right I found out that I was an alt-right Nazi on the comments section of NPR.
Yeah, I'm a Christo-fascist.
Oh yeah, Dan McClellan told me I'm a Christo-fascist.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought I was just
I'm glad these people
racist.
I'm glad these people are here to let us know what we are, because how would we know otherwise?
This is why I have no problem subsidizing their student loans, because I get so much value as they tell me.
Who would
It
tell
brings
me
so
what
much
I am?
production to our society.
Word, I mean the cult word, because there's
Blue
You can't
Mean
say
was
the
saying-
word and say it's the word, the cult word. You have to say
Blue Mean is
the
saying-
word.
And I agree with him that Hassan.
I'm just trying to say I'm not racist. I mean, I'm not misogynist. I'm not trying to say cunt. Okay, I'm saying cult.
Hassan did push back on him quite a bit. Like he kind of like you could see that they were trying to push him into it, and they were trying to get him to say stuff. And you're like, well, I don't know. I'd have to look into it. I see it, but I think you guys are getting a little hung up in your heads about these things and that sort of stuff. And John was really trying to put words in his mouth all through it. But listen to this next little bit.
This had to have been a thing, because this dude was a fucking Moonie. Where he's talking about hypnosis and brainwashing and stuff, and he's probably sitting there listening to these ex-Mormons like, what the fuck do you have to say to me?
I'm guessing Hassan
nice to him,
knows
but...
woke. Like, I'm sure he's familiar with it, and he knows better than he knows not to challenge it.
No, he wrote a whole book on the cult of Trump, which Lynn pushes multiple times. But he also talks, and I'm fine with people calling the cult of Trump a cult, whatever, if they're also going to say stuff like the Maoism and the Maoists were cult, and he does say the Maoists were cult.
Oh, it's like, I mean, look, Trump has his sycophantic followers, for goddamn sure. I'm old enough to remember Obama. And Obama still has sycophants. You know, like, if there's a cult of Trump, there's a cult of Obama, and there's a cult of Biden, and all this other stuff. Trump is a little weird just because he's so different. Let's see, what's this? Stacey Henley?
He says Stacey Henley in Kotaku article
troll.
specifically called me an alt-right Gamergate troll. Totally wrong. I'm a centrist libertarian work.
No, I'll bet you Troy gets onto GTA and just spews some anti-gay slurs all the day.
If
I mentioned it
Kotaku
before,
ever called me anything disparaging, that'd be like the most virtuous badge of honor anybody could ever hand to me.
I mentioned before,
I thought
that
Hassan...
on GTA multiplayer, the most toxic, insulting, anti-gay person I ever encountered were women. Like, they were hilarious. They cracked me up because they just went in to troll all the guys. But
so I thought Hassan was totally like reasonable on how he set it up and how he talked about cults and how he like cautioned on stuff, and then also said anything could kind of get there and all those sorts of deals. And it looks like he is pretty even across the board, willing to call any politics, any sort of anything a cult if you turn it into that. And willing to call anything not if you're willing to be able to walk away from it or chill off of it. I thought it was really reasonable about that.
Kind of like how it doesn't matter what comes out about Obama, nobody will ever adjust their opinion on him. Because like I sure did. I didn't vote for him, but I liked him. And then like it's been the years since he left office, and I'm like, oh God, no.
Yeah, me too. I all the way through, I just kind of it's a big nothing burger, man. Yeah. And then it's been afterwards that I kind of realized how entrenched and kind of sociopathic some different things done by that administration were. But I view that whole Democrat Blue Church, that whole world, as like the Borg. Like I don't view it as like there's any one like mastermind evil person. It's like,
that's true.
It's a hive mind,
That is the critical difference between communists and fascists, is that The communists are collectivists, obviously, and the fascists believe in a clear leader.
And those guys are
fascists
good.
highly individualistic, if I'm to believe Dan.
That's right.
And those guys are super good at managerial revolutions. Like they're good at taking over the mid-level bureaucracy so well, and that happened so over the top with Obama. And then when stuff seemed to switch overnight, it's because you didn't realize that like they had so securely grabbed hold of everything just right in the middle that it was time for them to start going wild with their policy making.
I really am terrified because it's coming soon when basically all judges will be judges that got a woke education.
From that Stanford school where they were protesting that teacher. All those kids are going to become
those kids are going to be and DAs.
And they've already pushed all the crap and the policies from the admins up and down and left and right. Like, even though we feel society in general kind of saying, all right, we're kind of chilling on this, we're a bit done with this, it's been more and more and more institutionalized. But oh well. Let's listen to this.
Focusing.
Few things more offensive to Mormons than to be told that they're part of a cult. And so even bringing you, Dr. Stephen Hassan, world cult expert, to Utah, just bringing you here, some probably would interpret as offensive. And then also bringing you on the podcast would be viewed as like an attack on the Mormon church.
No shit.
And then talking about Mormonism in the context of cults is just going to feel offensive to many believing Mormons. And so I think we should
You're just figuring this out, John?
It's funny because he spends this whole time trying to goad Stephen Hassan into saying, "Oh yeah, Mormonism is absolutely a cult," because he wants to be the good guy. He wants I didn't say it. I didn't say it. The expert said it. The super mega expert said it. And it's
all
funny
this preparation.
he spends this whole time.
Will you please say Mormonism is a cult for me on my podcast? That's what he's trying to do. That's what he wants.
No, it totally is because he spends his whole time. He's been trying to act like I'm saying his nice, goofy Mormon dad imagery is important to him, so he wants to maintain it. He wants to pretend that he's at this middle ground, and so he's trying to do this fucking annoying thing where he's like, "Oh, I don't call Mormonism a cult. I just got the #1 well-known cult expert in the world to come talk to me about this not cult."
95% of what drives me crazy about Larson, DeLynn, and all these guys is just the talking out of both sides of the mouth. Like, honestly, if they just like took the bias and ran with it, I'd have way less of like a.
No, exactly. Like, I mean, because I don't know, I felt like it's been more than 10 years since I came to the conclusion that cult just isn't a very useful word. You know, like especially if you want to start talking seriously about organizations. There's better phrases, you know, because cult has the pejorative connotation.
Oh yeah,
which is why John keeps saying it, because he doesn't like the church and he wants to be pejorative.
Check this, Parker.
Two things I care about. One is effectiveness.
that's. I mean, I think they care about being effective for converting Blue Church people into his Blue Church John Delaneyism. But he's not wanting to be effective of like honestly like not making people retrench into their ideas.
So subscriber count is how he means effective.
And the other is respectfulness.
We're more respectful than you.
That's the two things we care most about, John. Like she was like say like bald face, like John DeLynn here on Porch Time. One thing that we want to make sure that you feel all the time is that we totally respect your absolute bullshit. and we totally, that's first things first. Everything else we say, we want to start out with that because that's most important. The two most important things. And the other most important thing is that we're good. One is that we respect your lies, and two, that we're good.
As many people as possible.
We say all the good things.
We're so good. We're so good.
Help them lead healthy, happy lives. And just to go on the record, it's not my practice to call the Mormon Church a cult personally.
It's not your practice.
No, it's his.
Clinical psychology is your practice. Your job is calling the church a cult.
It's his practice to constantly bring up that he doesn't call the church a cult.
But you don't really get to experience.
Where'd that go?
Man, you've got 45 minutes. We're never gonna make it.
Well, I can jump ahead because like the next 10 minutes are just
Lead
him calling
healthy,
it a
happy
cult.
lives. And just to go on the record, it's not my practice to call the Mormon Church a cult.
You guys can just take my word for it. I'll flick through them quick, but you can take my word up there. I've got 10 and a half minutes, and I cut out a lot of him just going ahead and saying it's a cult.
All right, let's see it.
So I say, all right, let's see it. And then I just
takes you through these different criteria. Just think, does the church qualify or not? That for many, many years were violent and creepy and corrupt, and some still find them that way. But you don't really get to experience the cultish, creepy, violent temple rituals until you advance in levels. Unhealthy organizations or cults oftentimes use love bombing or flirt to convert as a way to emotionally manipulate people into joining. They also use the threat of withdrawal of love or unconditional love to keep people from changing their relationship with the organization once they're in. If I had to add some of the emotions that I'm familiar with that are used to manipulate within a Mormon context, and Samantha, I'd love to hear you add. Music. We talked about music being used as a way to manipulate positive emotion, to seal you and bind you in your commitment to the church. I always said my testimony in the music within Mormonism was one of the strongest parts of my testimony of the church. As I thought of it.
Did you ever watch that movie about Mozart?
Yeah.
I think it was Mozart, and what's his rival's name? I can't remember. Moriarty. Yeah. Moriarty.
No,
Moriarty is
Moriarty is
from
that's Sherlock
Holmes.
Holmes.
Sherlock Holmes.
Salieri.
Okay.
Salieri.
F. Murray Abraham is the guy.
Yeah.
Okay, so Salieri makes me think. That's what I always think of when I think of ex-Mormons, because I don't know how he was in reality, but in the movie he was portrayed as this guy who was just constantly pissed off that he worked really hard, but he was compared to this absolute once in a million years, prodigy, and
it was totally uncouth and didn't try real hard and didn't have to practice, and the talent all just came totally natural.
Anyway, it gets a little bit lost in the metaphor, but I always picture ex-Mormons being like this whenever they're around any actual cult survivors, because they really try to weasel their way into ex-Muslims, we get it, right? We both escaped a cult. So your dad tried to lop your clitoris off when he found out that you weren't gonna do the arranged marriage. Well, he grounded me for saying fuck one time, and now things are really
on Team
awkward
Oppressed together.
Oh yeah. So that's what this is to me, is every time John Dolan is begging him to admit he's a cult, it has to flash into his head. I was a fucking Moonie.
Value acting nice in terms of the demeanor, the language, the diction, kind of politeness. Personality that it takes to start a successful cult is different than 200 years later, once it's become literally almost $1 trillion corporation. So if you're analyzing your cult, your organization, your relationships, etc., here's some dimensions upon which you can evaluate it. A healthy organization or relationship is egalitarian, which means that there's as much equality as possible amongst the leaders and the participants. People that were raised in a totally different mindset or framework, but then joined a cult as an adult, were in it for a few years, and then they've woken up to it. Yes, I can see it taking a matter of a year to fully deprogram. Within Mormonism, what we're dealing with is people who have been conditioned for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, sometimes even 80 years.
Not a cult.
Conditioning. So here's my question to you. When you're dealing with people in a cult for 40, 50, 60 years, right? They've got this conditioning that's worn, talk about neuroplasticity. It's worn so deeply into the brains that 1 year with as much deep conditioning that a lifelong Mormon will have gained through their participation. I'm a little bit skeptical that 1 year of consulting with you, even if on a daily basis, is going to be enough to reprogram those.
But how did he straight face try to why did he even try to say that he was?
Why is he challenging Steve Hassan?
Why did he even feel like he needed to try to say starting out? Maybe Steve Hassan said he didn't want to do it unless he said that. Why even pretend?
Decades of conditioning. So my question to you is, if we talk about healing and growth, the first step is dealing with the mind control conditioning that's so intensely worn into the Mormon experience. So what can you share with my viewers and listeners about how to reprogram their minds away from the conditioning that's so deeply woven? It took me. Well, I left the church I lost my faith in 2001. I kept wearing my garments until 2014. So that's 13 years. I wore my garments when I no longer believed. If being a high demand religion or cult qualifies many people for a complex PTSD diagnosis, or what's the other diagnosis that you?
Dissociative disorder, unspecified 300.15. Always happen with cults where you're excommunicated and then people make up stories and attack you. That's real, but that's part of being in this space to dare to speak out against authoritarian cults.
Scientology calls it fair gaming. Yeah. In Mormonism, I've been smeared mercilessly on the internet. It's just part of the deal. Right now. Amazon is Combating Cult Mind Control by Stephen Hassan. There's a third book called The Cult of Trump, where if you want to learn about how Stephen has applied this model to Donald Trump and the Trump administration, this is something he's very passionately about. We try and stay away from partisan politics discussions on Mormon stories. but check out his book, The Cult of Trump, previously. Insist that you're a therapist or coach. If you're coming out of a high demand religion or cult, you're seeking support. Insist that you choose.
Like, just pretend. I know this goes past 10 minutes. I'll just jump, but you can imagine it's just more and more and more
And
of that.
I think there's something important there, because when I decided I didn't want to be Mormon, or I didn't believe anymore, and that the church wasn't going to work for me, I wasn't sure I was ever going to be more happy after leaving than I was within it. You're trading a lot away for an average set point that might not always be as happy as when you're in the cult. But I personally would rather be less happy and live a life based on truth and authenticity and informed consent than live a false life of fake, feigned happiness. Let me just take a second.
Okay, so it's funny that you brought this up because because I watched part of that. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I watched it back to back with the Piers Morgan Richard Dawkins debate, and God, it was actually very refreshing listening to Richard Dawkins, because I make fun of him a lot, but he will always have this special place in my heart because he doesn't really have the ability to be fake. I think he's this weird autistic in that way. Like, he can't do it. And like when they're asking him questions, like Piers Morgan is trying to press him, and I'm not sure how I feel about Piers Morgan. I think I probably hate him as an interviewer, but because he interrupts too much. But anyway, he's asking Richard Dawkins about like, okay, well, isn't it really, really difficult isn't it more difficult for you as an atheist when you lose loved ones and they die and you just think they're gone and they're not living again? Isn't that more difficult? He's like, well, yes, it's more difficult. And then that's it. He just leaves it at that. He's not trying to explain. He's like, yeah, it's probably worse for me.
He had this week where he came out and bit the bullet for J.K. Rowling, saying, as a biologist, there are two sexes. People are sending me this clip of Richard Dawkins as if he's obviously wrong. Michael Shermer saying that he's obviously right. He clarifies he's not talking about gender, just sex defined by gametes. Females make eggs, males make sperm.
Sorry, I interrupted. You were going to do something. You had a really funny transition about John Dehlin living in happiness, and then it flashed up.
Oh no, that's not a transition. That's a transition on episodes. That's actually just a stop point of that. That was just 10 straight minutes of him arguing this whole, and I cut out half of it. Like I literally did, and but that I didn't need to drive the point. And in this stuff I kind of drive the point in a little hard too, because this is now moving on to the SUU Elder Holland stuff.
Yeah.
And Jared, did you make that? Did you make that counter petition?
Or I did.
You made it? The one because it was even mentioned on Zelf on the Show.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
I didn't think anybody noticed it.
Yeah, they said they noticed it. I think I got the clip of that too. But there's a petition going around. They got like 15,000 signatures. The counter petition made by Jared had a couple hundred.
I don't know if it got that high. I thought it got to like 30 or some shit.
They gave it they credited a couple hundred to it on Zelf. But anyway, so he had this sudden panel. Like, there was so much this week. Like, I thought he was supposed to chill off. He said he was going to chill off after the Jen thing happened. And there was like 2-3 hours every freaking day. But this is the biggest, scariest thing ever, that Jeffrey R. Holland is going to be speaking at SUU. Oh my gosh.
He might use a metaphor at us.
Welcome, Matt Easton.
He pointed that metaphor right at my face.
Elder Holland called me out during my graduation speech. I had a lot of people really picking apart my decisions and what I said and why I said it at graduation.
Well, so you made it about you. That was actually such a spot on criticism of this dude's. Like, it's like, my criticism of it wouldn't be that he came out as gay. Like, obviously Holland would have a criticism of that, because it is weird to come out as being sort of theologically opposed to the theology that you spent 4 years in the school of, but whatever. I think it was more like you're giving a commencement speech as the speech as the valedictorian, and you're like, me. I know, like let's talk about the good grades that I got, and let's talk. So you absolutely made it about you. What are you talking about, dude?
Like, obviously, people have made the metaphor not even the metaphor, but pointed out, like, nobody has to attend BYU. It is a private institution and it's voluntary. There are other schools, and that's things like, these assholes are exactly like, if I decided to attend a university in Saudi Arabia and started kicking up a fuss that they don't serve bacon in the cafeteria. Like, no, They have rules. I know what they are when I join and decide to go there. And I don't have to stay there forever, and I can leave if I want to. Like, obviously, these guys it's a supremacist ideology, and so that's why this guy will go and throw his alma mater under the bus at his fucking commencement speech, you know, because just that, it's a supremacist ideology, and that's what he's working for. And throwing BYU under the bus is just a step toward his goals.
Holland
Also,
the chance to also
his eyebrows are too plucked. It's unnatural.
And also that people are giving him the same treatment that he gave me in many ways, where we say, okay, well, we want to think about what are the things that you would say? What are you standing for when you get up on that podium? You know, I think turnabout's kind of fair play. I'm a big believer of free speech and all those sorts of things. But I do think this situation is a little bit different because
I'm a believer in free speech, but
that's what all of them say. Every single one of them say that.
I'm a believer in due process, but
in this case, it's a super special case. We decide the exceptions. We decide the exceptions.
Yeah,
that's one of the things. I haven't put it out. Jared said we should maybe do a thing on it, but it's one of the ideas. It comes out of Carl Schmitt and his ideology of the who decides the exception. I think it's called I forget what the term of it is, but you can look up the Wikipedia on it. But the only sovereign person in an authoritarian society are the ones who decide the exception. And these guys, if you just look for it and live with it and think about it, they decide all the exceptions. Yeah. All the exceptions are for them.
Speech to give that musket talk, use that free speech to critique the way that people give graduation speeches, and these are the consequences, you know. And I do believe
the musket.
He misused it. You don't understand it. I love free speech, but he misused his free speech that I love, and those
and so it shall be taken away.
He doesn't get free speech anymore.
It shall be removed.
This whole thing where they're like, the church shouldn't expound their beliefs about sex and sexuality. And then they turn around and like, well, but let us tell you our thoughts about sex and sexuality and what we think is good and bad. Like, well, there you go. You're a supremacist.
This is one of the deals about it too, is like, it's never really mentioned on this that the speech they're talking about was given at a private meeting where it was leaked to the press. You know what I mean?
Oh, I didn't know that.
That was a BYU for faculty speech. It wasn't like some, you know, it wasn't like
it does. In many ways, I think, show that the university supports what he said in that message. And you know, I understand that people give talks all the time in different venues and situations where they might not align or agree with 100% the values of that institution they're speaking at. But Elder Holland made it very, very clear about how he feels about graduations in particular and the LGBTQ community. And so I think it's very safe to extrapolate those meetings. And
I don't think you mean. I think we know what he thinks about him, but he didn't make it clear.
He just pulled the sneaky thing, though. He did the sneaky supremacist trick. You guys don't represent the LGBT community. You represent LGBT activism. Mm-hmm. Holland doesn't have an issue with the LGBT community. He doesn't give a fuck. He cares about activists.
Which, by the way, that like, how is that not progress in your mind? How is it like, because they used to pay money to try to keep gay people from getting married, and now they're just like, okay, just don't like let us have our club.
Yeah.
That's really all it is left. I'm like, yeah, if you're not trying to legislate this shit, I'm not.
Think about like
because it was a big deal to me when they did Prop 8.
I mean, I brought this up before though. The sneaky sleight of hand he does, and it's something that all supremacist ideologies do. You know, Nazis claim to represent Aryans. They don't. The Nation of Islam claims to represent African Americans. They don't. Feminists claim to represent women. They don't. The KKK claims to represent white people. They don't. La Raza claims to represent Mexicans. They don't. You can keep going on and on and on about this of people who claim to be representing the group. You don't. You don't represent gay people. You represent gay activism of a particular branch. That's
one of the things I was thinking about too is like every single time the Mormon Church loses on one of these things politically, they don't go like run down the Capitol building, the places. They just like comply with it or start making a case for, well, the next thing might be dangerous, you know, and everybody loses their minds about it. Like so far, they just complied with whatever they get, whatever the law tells them they got to do.
It's really funny listening to this thing too, them trying to like hurl different, like they try to, the best they can do in claiming that he incited violence is blame the Club Q shooter on him. And it is funny because one of the people brings up like this Club Q shooter who, by all accounts, was raised Mormon. He was raised by a porn star.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, like I mean, that's one of the things. That was one of those things that was almost immediately disproven because like
Well, you just start
even the report
stabbing
said
and
we
attaching
asked the
anything.
ward. The ward said we don't know about him, and that's the thing is like Mormons of all people, especially like us that are returned missionaries. Well, I mean, maybe not for you guys because you were in a foreign country, but I can tell you in California, half of the ward rolls were kids that got baptized by grandparents and never came to church.
Yeah, that was the same
and
way.
Because that's obviously what is up with that Q shooter kid is that his grandma was a Mormon. She was raising the kids because the parents were obviously off their fucking
James has
rockers.
been on our podcast, and his grandma just died. Who did it? R.I.P. her. But she baptized James when he was young, and the family in between was like, I don't know.
Well, and it's actually, it has to be intentionally dishonest. I'm not going to believe that anybody's stupid enough to believe that Mormon ideology causes you to go shoot up a gay club, especially not Mormon ideology in the 21st century. There's nothing
suburban Colorado.
Yeah, come on.
This breeds dangerous men under the banner of heaven.
Yeah, I get that. I'm just saying, like, I know that they're lying. They're lying to the. Like that you can't be that ignorant. You can't grow up Mormon and think that. Yeah, like this shit that I was
they're
taught.
not ignorant. They know it's good activists. They
That's
know
what I'm
it's
saying. They
know
they're
it's good
lying.
activist line moving stuff.
Yeah. No, like it's almost as bad as like Jussie Smollett, where like you hear the details and they try to make the case where like, no,
did you guys watch that stuff with
fit.
That was so fucking funny.
The brothers came out talking about how they faked the thing.
Exactly how they did it.
That's so funny.
Yeah. Speak at graduation. It feels a little bit pointed that it would be Jeffrey Holland, and in some ways, I wonder if maybe it's an effort for the church and that team to kind of clean up their PR or reclaim this narrative of Holland and graduations in particular. I don't know, but I think that it is upsetting for me, at least, as somebody who has been in those same shoes of speaking at graduation and standing up for marginalized communities like my own, to then give that same podium to somebody who has kind of spit it back in our faces. I think
to give that same podium, like it's yours to give, or somebody else gives it.
I don't know that if you can afford a haircut and color, I don't know how oppressed or marginalized you are in the world.
And I'm concerned for the queer students on campus.
Holland's Musket Talk, and then we played the first
I've got a highlight reel
fire clip.
And 2 years later, Elder Holland gave that musket speech and used his free speech to give that musket talk.
After Holland gave his musket fire talk, after he denounced you, after
this is just one more reference for musket fire.
One thing I didn't have the panelists do
is this the Mormon cross state lines
panel to discuss
the musket talk? The musket talk.
Absolutely.
Is that okay?
The whole musket fire talk happened.
Musket fire.
Friendly fire, a metaphorical musket for the LGBTQ community. You are now also opening yourself up to musket.
You have to release this as just its own video. This clip of them saying musket
they
fire
mentioned multiple times they get that it was a metaphor, but still.
Well, I know they do. They keep trying to say like, well, I know he meant it as a metaphor, but it caused real harm and violence. Okay, what violence? Because you tried to bring the Club Q shooting, but that's bullshit. We know it's bullshit
really
immediately.
Little blip of my speech I wrote on this.
That's not
which one.
But that's not enough. That's not enough pronouns to be grammatically accurate.
Well, so I don't
like we need the direct and indirect pronoun, don't we?
No, I know. I had a whole. I gotta
to
show it to you. I had this whole this whole Facebook post where I worked out like the possessive pronoun versus. I was like, when you refer to me in the possessive form, it will be masculine pronouns. When you refer to me in the object, it will be feminine pronouns, and it will be neutral if I am the subject of the sentence. And I wrote out a sentence, and it was just confusing bullshit, right? And because that's actually what I read when I read this. Because what they're really saying is, if she says she, he, they, that just means call me anything in their stupid lingo. But that's how I read it too. Is just like, wait a minute, you don't have all the parts of speech there, you dumbass.
Yeah, we all know it from the queer theory stuff, but one of them mentions that he doesn't view her as a person if he won't do her.
Does she have the key for he car? Like
that's what I said. Is like if I had my pronouns, I had to put them up. I'd say him, he, but I want you to use him wherever he is there, and he wherever him is there. Those are my pronouns.
I take issue with being the object of a sentence.
No one's ever going to want to hear the words musket fire again. I was leaving the church. I was coming out of the church.
And
This
Oh,
one was funny. These
Christopher
two,
sent me something. Listen, I got one weaved in there. It's coming up. Listen to this for a second.
this one was funny as hell
Fire
because these
talk.
two.
When Jeffrey R. Holland made his infamous musket fire devotional at BYU, in that speech, there were very pointed remarks that people like me.
Holland's musket talk.
People like
You
you.
say nobody. You didn't say
What is
put
it, people
a
like you?
musket to LGBTQ people. There's so much like concept creep of that. They keep saying they said pull muskets on LGBTQ people, and that's not how he said it. He was saying like if people are coming in and attacking in, you should get in a defensive mode.
How
and have
easy
your
is it?
muskets.
How easy is it to get a hold of a musket? I've never figured that out because if we're taking this literally, surely he didn't mean a Glock, right? Because like if we're taking it literally, like he actually meant
about
musket
old
fire
times
on these
about
people,
defending
you
your
can't
country.
say, yeah, you can't like if somebody pulls out a Glock, then he's gonna be like, no, I meant that literally. You can only hate crime with a musket.
But I guess you can do the backlash. Of course, it has to do with his musket speech. A
very passionate speech that became famous for
It's
it.
outrageous. It's so outrageous. We must make it the most outrageous thing. We must. What's the word that Jonathan Haidt uses? We must catastrophize. And John DeLynn, you therapist, you are keying at cognitive behavioral therapy where you're supposed to remove the catastrophe. No, you are there to catastrophize.
No, it's
That's what
God
you
damn
do.
it, like
you are the catastrophizer.
And this thing's like these guys are choosing their targets because like there's mosques in Utah, and I guarantee that their attitude toward homosexuality is far more strident than BYU's. I goddamn guarantee it. I dare you to go after them like you're going after BYU. You bunch of fucking hypocrites.
That's one of my favorite tag groups on Facebook is Now Do Muhammad.
But you've seen nowadays, and we got that the U.S. Army is going to start using that. I mean, I had it there with Michael Tracy pointing to it in that screen. The U.S. Army and even the one of the guys said at the White House just the other day, they're going to start use it as a reason that they got to go after Putin and all that stuff because they're not cool with the LGBT stuff. They're going to start making it an issue. Let me see if I pull it up here real quick. Charlie, stop it. Let's see.
Charlie, you're gonna get us a channel strike for pornography.
There it is, Michael Tracy pulling up. Human rights practices in China, Michael, Tibet, and they're bringing it up to Michael Tracy says, just like that, Putin arrest warrant was coincidentally issued last week. Today, the State Department coincidentally issues its big human rights report accusing China of genocide, crimes against humanity, systemic racism, violence against LGBTQI, social media censorship. And let me see.
Hong Kong, Macau, and Tibet. You know, there's that crazy bridge between Macau and Hong Kong where halfway across the bridge, you change from right side drive to left side drive because Hong Kong is left side and Macau is right side. I can't imagine what a clusterfuck that is.
Jesus. I don't know. There's a lot of like non-American roadways that seem like everybody should be dying all the time on them. And they work
my buddy,
like it's nuts.
A couple of years ago, my buddy went to Nepal. He's a Buddhist, and he went with his congregation to Nepal. And the way he described traffic in Kathmandu is that it's just a free-for-all.
So here it is.
Asked, is this really about your foreign policy? And he was like, yeah, of course it is. Of course my foreign policy is spreading gay everywhere. What are you talking about?
And President Biden has been nothing but consistent about his foundational belief in human rights, and LGBTQ plus rights are human rights. And we, again, back to the earlier question, we're never going to shy away, be bashful about speaking up for those rights and for individuals to live as they deem fit, as they want to live. And that's something that's a core part of our
already.
What if the way they deem fit to live is as a traditional conservative Christian? Is that okay? Is that allowed?
Well, what's freaky about that is that stuff's going to start being used to justify invasions or
No, they're going to
wars
colonize.
against Putin in China.
This feels like the Rick
will
and
the
Morty
beautiful,
meme.
what
This is
will the beautiful Orwellian term for colonization be that they use in place of colonization? You know, like I commented on NPR today because like I don't know if you heard about that Uganda passed like a truly sweeping evil anti-LGBT law, you know, but it's like, you know, like, hey, NPR, it's not okay to judge indigenous traditional values.
Well,
Remember?
they haven't written on it. They haven't worked it out in their head how this is actually the fault of white supremacy yet. So, which is weird because they got the perfect formula for it. You know,
Yeah,
all
no,
they
they
got
threw
to
the
do is be
Belgians
like,
out.
the colonization of Africa is complete, and therefore this is all the fault of white supremacy.
Okay, watch this. Watch this coming up. Watch for the exception. Watch for the exception.
The musket fire reference that he made at least 7 references to this musket fire rhetoric. A lot of mentioned this phrase of musket fire in relation with defending the churches to the musket fire.
Holland's musket fire rhetoric.
I'd like to hear a little more musket fire from the Temple of Learning.
Or doesn't understand how this rhetoric could be construed as violent. Talking about guns, important to remember that his words have power and continue to have power, and this violent rhetoric, important to remember that his words have power and
would have been nonviolent. But which one did Elder Holland choose? Musket fire. Doesn't matter if you personally do not interpret that speech as a violent call to arms, because many other people did, and their campuses are a more dangerous place now because of it.
Concerns about Dr. Holland's violent rhetoric against the LGBTQ community, and I'm sure that by the time this is all over, no one's ever. But it always needs to stop when it comes to having violent imagery and metaphors, and that should happen.
I wonder what will happen there, because I could see them wanting to like keep, if they've already decided it, I could see them wanting to stick to their guns. Sorry for the metaphor.
I just want to say that I felt super unsafe watching that.
She's even English, where they don't have guns because they're so fucking enlightened, and she's still using the metaphor. That's amazing.
Metaphor. It's coming around.
Oh
again.
my god.
The individual that has encouraged violent and hateful rhetoric against minority groups here on campus, especially LGBTQ.
Opinions are perfect until it comes to violent metaphors. And I would say that on both sides, every side, as soon as you start
every side.
So
using,
Robbie and Mikey
I don't know,
there,
like,
one of them is
weapons
obviously a
as
girl, but is it
metaphors,
Robbie or
like that.
Mikey?
It just crosses a
They're
line.
both.
I can see them wanting
Oh.
to stick to their guns. Sorry for the metaphor.
Big rhetoric. This
No,
rhetoric.
it's the Robbie and Mikey
rhetoric,
one is really
rhetoric,
funny because they
rhetoric.
come on
This
there
is
and they're like,
rhetoric.
we're actually choosing to hide our identity because it's just super dangerous for queer people like us. No, it's not. It isn't.
No,
it
it's
absolutely
not, yeah.
isn't. Like, what are people going to make fun of you on Facebook? Shut the fuck up.
Rhetoricians in the LDS Church
doesn't understand.
Oh, this is just a highlight reel of them using the word rhetoric now, which I swear on my life.
This rhetoric can be construed as violent.
There's no room for any gun rhetoric ever by a representative.
I can see them wanting to stick to their guns. Sorry for the metaphor.
This violent rhetoric.
That one keeps
I'd
coming
love to
up.
give them the benefit of the doubt, but at this point, it seems that rhetoric has consequences. Taken to be violent rhetoric. Rhetoric that has been expressed before.
Rhetoric and allowing them to represent.
Concerns about Dr. Holland's violent rhetoric against the LGBT.
Who are affected by these harmful rhetorics that people like Dr. Holland are spreading.
Some of they toss around all these kids at school. They
See,
toss
these
around
are-
all these kids at school, and it's like you can really feel that they are doing it like they are giving a report in class, and they're supposed to hit all the beats and the notes and the stuff to get a proper grade from the teacher, because this is what you
Yeah.
say nowadays as
They're
a trained,
all-
coddled commissar.
Yeah.
They're all the
But
same person.
Sticks and
Like,
stones
I
may
remember
break in my
making-
bones, but rhetoric will literally kill me. That's the new run.
I remember making fun of, like, I still make fun of the general conference voice. You know,
Yeah.
like how similar all of the talks sound to each other, but it's nothing compared to this. Every single one of these students could be indistinguishable from each other
Yeah.
if you just like had them talk.
They got the message.
It's almost
So I
as
don't
if
know that-
they all have ascribed to a particular ideology that doesn't allow for any heterodox thought.
He will bring any hateful rhetoric here at SUU, but I think the harm is endorsing an individual that has encouraged violent and hateful rhetoric against minority groups here on campus, especially.
You can be disappointed in Elder Holland's speech and rhetoric.
Rhetoric or content. and people. Hate speech and violent rhetoric.
But Tom Christofferson is someone I love and deeply respect, and he did write a Deseret News article, co-authored with another gentleman, and the article is called "We've Witnessed Campus Cancellation Campaigns. Elder Holland Deserves to Be Heard at Southern Utah University." This surprised me, Gerardo, and I don't know if it did you as well, because we heard Tom Christofferson speak out on a podcast. I think it was Faith Matters, where he basically was willing to publicly express his disappointment in Elder Holland's musket talk, etc.
So could this person possibly believe in the liberal value of freedom of speech and a plurality of ideas?
It's insane to me that this guy says that I don't like what he said. Let him say it.
You can, I guess, you can do.
It confuses me.
I
I'm
don't
15-year-old
understand.
John DeLynn. This is confusing concept for me. You never come across this before.
Both. You can be disappointed in Elder Holland's speech and rhetoric and still believe passionately and fight for free speech or be against what some call cancel culture. And in this article that I'm referring to in the Deseret News,
What some call
these two authors basically just say,
come on.
It's a woke word. The woke gave us the term canceling for publicly deplatforming people using social media and the weight of public opinion. That's their words. So don't put
They came up with it over wasn't it The Simpsons? Cancel The Simpsons, and then South Park ran with it.
The first time I ever heard it was cancel
woke.
Colbert.
Like
The
that,
cancel
woke was
Colbert
their
thing.
word too.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like woke was their word, cancel was your word. Like it's funny they put so-called on this. Like, no, we got it from
conservative or
you.
liberal. Once we start canceling people on other sides of the spectrum, we start really limiting and narrowing the conversation, and that does damage to the overall community and discourse. So I know that what I just said is going to be probably very triggering to many of you.
It's a trigger to uphold classical liberal values for your audience. I see that that's a trigger.
Panelists to raise their hand and give people a chance to respond to this question about just basic cancel culture. Let's start with Alexa.
First, I want to say that I totally agree, and that censorship on either side does lead to a reduction in overall discussion.
They all
and
say the same
that
thing.
does nothing
I
for
can maybe jump
for our
over
larger
them
society as a
because
whole.
each one of them.
But they're all so like
freedom of
what do they
speech
say?
isn't freedom from consequences.
Yeah, you guys tell me this. Oh, and hate speech isn't free speech, which I don't know who the heck gave people that slogan.
Yeah, that one's not even workable.
That was one of the first things that was like a turning point for me on when I was on Facebook arguing with people back in the Trump era in the early 2016, 15, 14s, and suddenly people were saying that, and I was like, "What are you talking about? What do you mean hate speech is not free speech? That's not a thing. Where did you guys get this all of a sudden?"
I remember you know where the woke got it from? The woke got it from, I think, I don't know, in my memory, Islam with the Danish cartoons. That was where I first heard that whole thing with the Danish cartoons. It's like, oh no, this isn't free speech because it offends our sensibilities.
I remember having this great history teacher, and that's rare in the public school system. Who,
you're not kidding.
He started talking about the First Amendment and free speech, and he was trying to explain to us what an American liberal value that is, and how big of a deal it is. And he's explaining to us that let's say somebody's thrown in prison for defending Judaism. You gonna fight for them? Then all the kids are like, well, yeah, of course, they're defending Judaism. It's not my religion, but I'm fight for them. Okay, somebody's thrown in jail for saying the Holocaust didn't happen. What are you gonna do? And then everybody shut the fuck up for a second, and that it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, oh yeah, no, you gotta defend. And that's the first time I heard that phrase, that the only type of free speech that you're ever going to have to defend is abhorrent speech. But it turns out he was wrong about that because it used to be that way. It used to be me saying you should absolutely legally be able to deny the Holocaust, but it's not the case anymore. Now it's me saying, no, there actually really are only two genders. And even if there aren't, you should be allowed to say it.
Yeah.
I do have a couple thoughts, and one is that I believe that institutions, especially federal funded institutions that are funded with taxpayer dollars, have the responsibility to prevent the spread of any kind of harmful rhetoric or content.
Well, that's a horse of a different color, because I've sure heard different about the public schools in Florida and their free speech and who is able to say what or who's able to teach what. I can't believe, because those are truly public, all the way public. These universities receive federal funds, but they get held to the same rules or whatever. But everybody on this side of things lost their brains when they started saying we're going to start curating what is taught in public schools according to what the people say, because they lost their minds. It's free speech. You don't make free speech. You make judgment free speech. No, it's a public school, and what gets taught in that public school gets agreed upon by the public, you mutton heads. But then, of course, you decide the exceptions, don't you? Because you're the oppressed. You're not the authoritarians. You're the oppressed.
And they have the responsibility to protect vulnerable people. Hate speech and
like, what is that too? Like they're gonna make all these like caveats for the vulnerable people, and then you have to protect that. Like, you're inventing stuff. You're inventing stuff out of whole cloth, and then that has to fit your ideology, and it has nothing to do with anything. It's not in any law anywhere, and you can say it as if it is. And it's not. It's just not true.
Violent rhetoric are serious issues that can.
Oh, and then you guys define what's violent. What's violent rhetoric? But you can say whatever violent rhetoric you guys want to say. Like, I mean, what was this?
That's one of those things with, I mean, with the exceptions. Like, you know, BLM wasn't violent, but rhetoric is. You know, I mean, that's one of those things about, like, I mean, Orwell was absolutely right. Is that it's the exact same people who told us that words are violence and silence is violence. Like,
this trans
they make
day
all the
vengeance.
exceptions. Oh yeah,
This trans day of vengeance coming up, and on C-SPAN there was a black man on there saying that he wanted to eradicate all whites. He didn't say whiteness.
Yep.
Like, you know, but no, you guys decide the exceptions. You guys decide who are the marginalized and all that stuff. Even though you guys got the entire U.S. military backing you.
You know, one of the most alarming parts of this whole panel was there was a student that was, I can't remember exactly what she was bitching about. I should say they, because I think that's the pronouns that they is using, but I'm not.
What is the general
Apologize.
insult for bitching? Because that, you know, bitching has a gender connotation, so we have to come up with some kind of special new word that describes.
I guess that would be putting
gendered.
forth perfectly valid grievances would be.
Nobody's
bitching because bitching has negative connotation. Bitching assumed it invalidates the complaints of the bitcher. And anyway, no, what was so shocking to me in this was there was that one person and she was talking about the decision to not immediately just get rid of Holland. She said it doesn't make me feel loved by this administration, and I need to feel loved by this administration.
It was loaded up with love.
Holy
Take care of us,
fuck.
love us. Who loves us? Who
needs
worries
that?
about us? Our safe spaces. It's coddling. It's coddling of the American
Who
mind.
has ever wanted to be loved by their college admin?
Black and white thinking. They decide the exceptions.
Impacts on individuals, as we have heard a lot of you talk about. So I do believe that the university, a public university, has a responsibility to protect those vulnerable people and also maintain its
reputation.
reputation.
That.
And then,
great. That's great that you believe that. You believe that.
Another thing that I just wanted to mention is that I think it was Robbie or Mikey who brought this up. But to me, there's a difference between disagreeing on politics and religion.
Oh yeah, that's one of the things they kept saying is that it's politics. Like, you can censor people if it's not politics. You know, that's what they think it makes.
But they also decide what is and isn't politics. You know,
this isn't politics. This is rights. This is human rights. Shut up.
When it comes to disagreeing with someone's identity or sexual orientation, which is something that you don't choose.
Oh, that's something that goes back and forth in LGBTQ. You gotta take that up with the Qs. Because
this is also spoken by a bunch of determinists who you don't choose anything. So yeah, you don't choose your sexual orientation. You don't choose your religious views either. If that's the case, if we're a bunch of determinists now.
I mean, what is it that Riley Dennis used to say? If you were somebody who was so fixated on genitalia, you were genitalia centric or something like that, and that was bigoted for you to be, you know. Take it up with the Qs, you know, if that's changeable or not.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's so messed up about this whole thing is that the goal of the Qs is to get rid of the LGBs and Ts. Like, the Q's ultimate goal is that there's just Q and nothing else.
On the same drugs. I sent you guys the thing. Mary Harrington. She was talking about. She grew up,
Oh, yeah,
and when
I
she was
just watched a
younger,
little
she was
bit
a
of that.
lesbian. She was a lesbian, and she was on old school pre-Tumblr internet lesbian pages. And she said not one woman that she dated in her lesbian days, because she came out of it, and now she got married and has a kid. She said not one woman out of many that she dated is still a woman. Every single one of them changed trans. Which is one of the things that Sullivan also says, that, like he says, Andrew Sullivan, he talks about there's literally hardly any lesbians anymore. Almost all lesbians end up becoming trans in some sort of way.
And you cannot change. You can always change your political affiliation. You can change your religion, but we didn't choose our sexual orientation or gender identity. And so fighting against or speaking against or believing against someone's
These things are such talking points. Like, they're doing these talking points that everybody's been hashing out hard for 4 or 5 years, but I don't know if they haven't heard the other sides of it, but you're just presenting them again to us like talking points. And they're just talking points that they've been challenged, and you're just re-presenting them again as well, here's the talking point, and the talking point is just how it is.
Me crosses a different line.
Y'all are heroes to us. Y'all are doing really important pioneering work. I remember when I was young, learning about the civil rights movement, learning about the marches on Selma and the Alabama, the bus boycotts, and thinking that I was, denied the opportunity to be a part of some sort of civil rights struggle so that I could use my voice.
So one of the things that we've always called this
go.
is Selma envy. It's Selma envy. You wish that you were freedom fighters, like in that time you had something so pure and so huge to go up against. It gave your life meaning and some reason to be there, and some reason to have your bullcrap phony degrees that you're all getting.
And stand up. And what I just want to note
that is
for
an
all of
admission
you,
right there. He doesn't even realize it. What an
Yeah,
admission.
you announced you had Selma envy. You're not supposed to announce you had Selma envy.
that you are doing it. You are raising your voices, using your power. You are putting yourselves on the line in some ways, in a very real way that even potentially threatens your safety, just like the protesters in the South.
Look at this. This is the exact same group as the ones that marched on Selma.
They're equally as brave.
You're all doing that today, right now, in your communities.
Because
Where
Jeffrey
is
R.
the
Holland might have given a completely docile, boring talk at SU.
Where is the cafeteria where any of these people aren't allowed to sit down and have lunch? What bus are they not allowed to ride on? What scholarships are they cut out from? What schools are they not allowed to defend? Like,
there's a million
these people are trying to compare themselves with the black people in the civil rights movement. Holy shit!
There's a million scholarships and opportunities now that only they are eligible for.
Are you saying that perceived persecution is different than actual persecution?
I do believe so. We are saying that.
Well, that's you questioning lived experiences.
Because just like the Nazis pretended like they were the oppressed ones when they weren't. That's what these people are doing. No, you guys are in charge. You guys have all the institutional and political power. You have all the social media power.
It's all oppression, dick measuring contest.
And you deserve to be honored and respected because you are the voices and the faces of tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. Well, I would say thousands.
I wish I had it in here because I forgot. There's a part where he makes a direct plea to Holland. I should have included it, but it was really cringy. But
the SUU students, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands
goes
of
on
Utahns,
to some Zelf and then
millions
John
of people
Larson
around the United States, and who knows how many around the world.
Yeah, I read a story a little while ago. A woman who was in Sarajevo when the society collapsed, and she was in the streets as a partisan fighter, and she describes that time period. Although she would never want to go back and suffer, the hunger and the deprivation and the violence, she describes it as the happiest time of her life because she was fighting for a cause. She absolutely knew what her purpose was, and she was absolutely.
You guys at all putting any 2 and 2 together with any of this? That maybe you're fighting windmills. Maybe you're Don Quixotes, a bunch of you. You guys got any sort of sense that you're a bunch of Don Quixotes?
Connected to the other people who were fighting with her. She was doing something that was full of meaning, and everything that she did, every amount of suffering she had purpose. So she was happy.
You invited Jeffrey R. Holland.
So SUU, like a secular university, right? They don't claim to be they don't claim to support Mormonism in any way, or
Right. Surely have a lot of members of the church in their ranks in the student
Right.
body. There's no doubt about it. A state-run university, a secular school, and it's not entirely uncommon for a school to invite like a Mormon, but like one who has recently used the.
Is it uncommon for schools to invite pastors, reverends, whatever?
Nope.
No, not at all. Not in any way, shape, or form.
The phrase.
I wonder
"Wanting
if
to hear
the
more must
Reverend Jesse James has ever been invited to speak at any schools for any
get
reason.
fired."
That's different
Aimed at the
because
That's the exception we decide on.
LGBTQ community.
AKA
Who was it that always? I
the
can't remember. There's one conservative, or maybe more, but somebody would always ask, like, where was it? Hitch? Like, where is his congregation? He's a reverend of what? He
And,
has no
the-
church.
The comment section
Anyway.
for the SUU post about this was just a heyday. Instantly, there was a petition up, which was signed by over 10,000
let's
people,
check
I
that
think.
petition's out.
And then a counter petition that was, showing support for Holland speaking at SUU that only had like a few hundred.
I think that's referring to yours, Jared.
I think there's probably a different one. I don't think mine made it.
The difference was really, of course, I'm pouring through, and
Brave.
and people are like, oh, it's not just because people hate him because he's just a Mormon. Like he's also a great scholar and a leader in education.
Yes, his poetry is why they put him there.
I mean,
No, that's not why. That's
overreacting.
not
This
why
isn't-
we opposed it. We opposed it on strictly on free speech grounds and nothing else. Has nothing to do with propping up Holland as some kind of great person. It's irrelevant.
People who don't understand like principles are absolutely
Yeah.
baffled when they think that anybody could be principled at all. Like
Yeah,
the
that's true.
principle is like the rule is the same for me as it is for the people I disagree with. I think Holland's wrong about a lot of shit. I don't think gay marriage should be illegal. That's a thing him and I probably would do a lot differently if we were in charge of the nation. But like in my nation, he gets to say, I think gay marriage is an abomination. And I'll say, yeah, that guy's wrong about that. And I'll move on. But he can keep saying it in his club.
There's been endless amounts every single year of lefty dingbats giving these commencement speeches, and I haven't stopped and thought to protest a single one of them.
This is bullshit.
The big issue. He was just saying we have to defend the faith. That's not a big deal. And it's like you're telling me that a trained rhetorician. I'm not a rhetorician.
Shut up!
A person trained in the art of language, shall we say, like intentionally adopting a gun metaphor to just being directed at a community that is the regular.
Somebody who is a rhetorician or a linguist, or they say he's somebody who has literary degrees, they'd be more apt and more likely to use a metaphor and imagery, and you should give it more of a pass because they're using imagery and ideas, not your stochastic terrorism.
Regular victim of gun violence, and then to say like,
No, they're not. Did he just say that the LGBT community is disproportionately victims of gun violence? That's not true. Frankly, like
We know exactly
the disproportionate victims of gun violence are young black men in certain neighborhoods. Like that's the lion's share of victims of gun violence right there.
And it's by
It got
cops,
nothing
right?
to do with LGBT.
Don't you know they're all as gay as Omar on The Wire?
And it's by cops, isn't it? Cops are the ones perpetrating, right?
That's right.
It's cops. ACAB.
Crash Test Dummies comes to mind. Pardon me.
Jeez,
that what
somebody's
you just
dating
spoke,
himself.
Was it a parable or a very funny joke? Don't know why it seems. I love a Superman never made any money, saving the world from Sodom and Gomorrah.
And we have some scars too. Don't let anyone tell you this is a one-way fight. And it's like, from what? From literally what? From trying to make gay marriage illegal for like 10 years straight, for pouring millions of dollars into that effort. Like, you haven't been hurt at all. No one's trying to make being Mormon illegal.
It's just a really stupid move for the university, and obviously, like the people at
Yeah, you are.
the top are probably Mormon, and that's why they
Yeah,
didn't see that it
if
was
you
an
had
issue.
the
But it's like,
choice.
obviously, there are non-Mormon students, so that alone, I feel like should, unless they're kind of a religious leader who, for whatever reason, has like some mass appeal. I mean, I don't think even then.
It's not Desmond
Yeah, I
Tutu
was gonna
showing
say.
up. It's like Eckhart Tolle
He has mass appeal in Utah. Come on.
is walking in.
But Jeffrey Holland doesn't have any like larger appeal. Yeah.
Yes, he does in Utah. Southern Utah. There'll be plenty of people giddy about that.
When they invite those kinds of people,
Absolutely.
which is yeah, it's not like definitely has much more influence than Elder Holland specifically called out Matt Easton, who was a gay valedictorian who came out
So
over the stand during his commencement speech in a way that was totally approved beforehand by the faculty and staff in charge of the event. It had to go through.
Well, again,
Yeah, those guys are
Jeffrey Holland is
adults.
someone who's supposed to be trained in the art of language. Obvious.
Yes.
Also, I feel like we shouldn't even have to say this, but so the sort of Mormon line of criticism they have for various videos we've made about this is, oh, he was just a metaphor. Like, obviously, he's not actually calling on people to like shoot gay people.
Yep.
Yes.
But number one, yeah, he's trained in literature or whatever, and he's like deliberately choosing to use that metaphor, and it's insensitive.
Holy
Also-
fuck! Wait a minute. Is this some QAnon shit? Like, is this conspiracy theory territory we're getting to? That like Holland, no, he knows what he was doing. He knows that a lot of
Stochastic
people,
terrorism, man. Stochastic
yeah,
terrorism.
he knew that it would be construed by a lot of people as being just a metaphor, but he knew.
He was calling
knew.
for. He was saying,
It was
"Oh,
a dog whistle.
how
It was
how
a
did they say
dog
they
whistle.
do it? Is like some old king would say, "Oh, who would remove this person from my presence?"
Won't
And-
someone rid me of this turbulent priest?
Yeah.
Possibly
I know.
mean? What would that compare to? What would that represent?
But then also, someone who is a leader of a so-called
Fight,
global
you
church
dumb
should be
shit.
aware-
Hey, Elder Holland, looks like it's your turn to give a graduation speech. Make sure not to mention anything about your faith, family, or personal convictions. Wouldn't want you to commandeer the podium from all those graduates.
I'm curious, like, how would he give a commencement speech? Do you think he'd give like some Mormon speech? I don't think he'd give a Mormon speech.
I
at a
don't think he
regular
would. I don't know.
commencement.
Has he? We need to find. Has he ever given a commencement speech somewhere that
I'd be
wasn't
curious.
a Mormon church?
No, but I mean, we have countless examples of.
'Cause I agree.
Other religious leaders? Yeah, there's-
I agree. They
And
can
other
say like
religions.
God or so. I think it's fine if like somebody mentions God because obviously a ton of them do. But I think if they gave something that was particularly Mormon, I think that would be
Like no, if he
not
if he
great.
gets up and gives the first discussion, that would be pretty fucked. But I don't think he'll do that. They never have
Which works
before.
So hard to get there. Ready for more Mormon news? So, of course,
Let's
we're saving
change
the
the
world.
subject. We're getting off of Jeffrey R. Holland and going into these guys talking. They noticed that somebody couldn't define woke.
The rise in anti-drag, anti-trans
Oh no, it's drag first.
legislation as an attempt to scapegoat queer people as the problem in the world, the people who are coming after your children, groomers and pedophiles who are just lying in wait to ruin your
Oh no! He just did it again. He did it again. Queer activists don't represent queer people.
son, your daughter caught in the arms of an animal
Stop
instinct.
trying to
Yes.
pretend like they do.
Areas. But unfortunately, the data just doesn't back up any of those conservative claims. Turns out every single day I wake up to a new headline about some pastor, some Catholic
Wait,
priest, some
my
Mormon
lame
bishop
straw man is easily defeatable? No way. I am so smart.
using a child.
This is one of the funniest shits. Like one of the funniest things ever. They talk about the pastors and shit like that. They'll be like, but you're okay with pastors fucking kids. Like, no, I'm absolutely not. I'll never leave my kid alone with a pastor. My kid will never go alone with a religious leader, especially to talk about his sexual sins. I hate the way that the Mormons do that.
Well,
But, like most of us that are shitting on this, we don't want kids to be raped by anyone. They always draw the fucking parallel to the, oh yeah, you're not going to take your kids to Hooters anymore. Like, no, we were never doing that to begin with.
Yeah.
Like, none of the people who were bitching about this are like, well, yeah, I'm going to go take my kid to the titty bar, obviously, just as long as it's not a man pretending to have titties. No, they don't want any of it.
This guy, Calvin, is awesome.
He's great, yeah.
These British guys, when I listen to them in full speed, I don't understand them as well.
Whatsoever. I mean, the most basic cursory internet search will show Miss Rachel Rare charged with possession and production of indecent, prohibited images against children. Bruce Williams charged with 2 counts of possession of child porn. Darren Moore found dead in Cardiff, convicted of
Let
child
alone all the
rapist.
pictures and videos that we see of how they
drag
actually
queen
act
story
on
hour person who.
And then somebody else always brings up the point too is like, what are the books they're reading to them too? The books are almost always grooming books in the true sense of grooming. Like we're going through grooming into this idea of this world.
This is the funniest shit.
Well,
They're
there's so
counting
much-
on this phenomenon that happens that when they make a claim confidently, people will believe it. Because I've fallen to this before. I've because the amount of times that people say, "Well, how many times is a drag queen being convicted of pedophilia?" I was like, "Well, I remember a couple, but." Like, if they're saying that, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they've looked into this. But no, that's a stupid fucking thing. And it was actually on the Lotus Eaters where Calvin here.
It's coming up.
He just goes over this shit.
Very, very
I've got it
disappointed
right here.
that someone can
Although it's just a
sit here
smaller
and
clip of it
deflect
too.
and make the issue, try to make the issue about me on his Twitter.
This is not so much an insinuation as an accusation. Since there hasn't been a single instance I can find of drag queens grooming children for sex, hold on to that. Those who do that tend to dress up as respectable middle-aged men. This simply constitutes an unpleasant libel. Right, okay. You haven't got any examples. Okay, I'm just going to assume you're a crap journalist because I've got 3 just offhand. Right, first one, drag queen Robert Clothier, who headlined Brighton Pride, caught in a police sting after arranging sex with children with chocolate-flavored condoms and pink underwear from Primark in his bag. He had
Jesus.
multiple instances of child pornography at his home. Was only jailed for 18 months. He's out. Yeah. Right. Next one. Alfonso Garza in Texas. He was a convicted sex offender, and they let him host Drag Queen Story Hour because the library didn't do a background check. Right. Next one. Here's one. Most recent. Tate Gallery guy. Right. He decided to crowdfund for the funeral of a convicted child sex offender who has recently died of manslaughter charges, which are being investigated outside a Cardiff nightclub. Drag queens. Right. This is the most recent one of the most recent protests.
Yep.
So you just didn't bother looking it up, did you? Because you're running interference for a regime that's paying your wages.
Second soundbite.
Yeah, look.
So then they move on to the can't define woke thing here. They pulled up this clip. We pulled this clip last week.
And that was the clip.
What do you guys think?
So it's always so funny asking a person to explain what woke means and then waiting for them to say something not racist because they can't. And especially
You aim at the fences so hard every time and just
When has this happened to you?
swing and a whiff.
When have you watched somebody trip over racial slurs after you ask them what woke is? These are all shower hypothetical conversations where you slay the religious right.
No, just like the stereotypical Kara type Mormon assumes that all non-Mormons just have wickedness in their hearts all the time. Because what else could they be? These guys have the same view. Like, there's people who think like us, who are good and righteous and empathetic, and then there's literally everyone else.
usually they'll say something to that effect, but this person was obviously being interviewed by a person of color and completely fumbled it. Several, like 1,000+ shares of.
Just going back to that drag thing, I didn't pull any clips from it, but John Lynn had that other episode with the mental health parents. And in that one, they talked about being very, very upset at the church that they didn't run by the parents mental health issues of their missionary kids who were 19 years and older. But going back to this drag world
That's
and
a
stuff,
thing.
But going back to this drag world and parents, they have all these different ideas and set up things of saying you're not supposed to tell parents about what kids' mental health stuff are happening at much younger ages at schools.
The parents will
you
cause
guys
harm.
decide the exceptions. You guys, who decides the exceptions? The authority.
Yeah. Water to the Great Salt Lake.
Water shares, is it normal for a church to have? Just checking.
Very good question.
Oh, here's one. Watch this one. You'll know the stopping point. There'll be a cut. Hold on.
Yeah, I mean, great.
It makes you ask a lot of questions.
We love
I'm gonna go this. I want to do this on a normal speed. All right.
Did they get it? Who did they take it from? Who had it first?
Yeah, I mean, it's nice when a PR move.
What do you mean first?
Something.
Were you Swiftie?
Yeah, and
Is
you
that
know,
what they're
I
called?
found out about her private jet usage, and I was like, "That's fine. She can have that."
She gets a pass.
No, but
Who decides the exceptions? Who decides the exceptions? Who
How
decides the
benevolent
exceptions?
of you.
Who decides the exceptions?
For asking
Her
what my opinion was
empathy,
on
her empathy just washes that carbon footprint off.
on the church giving up those water shares, and I say, yay, bravo, well done. That's the first step. Let's keep. And they stop watering the temple lands, and we will know the church is serious when their green lawns go brown, when they let the front lawns go dormant, and they stop watering the temple lands and all the churches.
There can never
the
be
water
a
gospel
win.
is something
It can never just be like, good job giving all this shit to people that you didn't have to give to people. It's like, we'll know that you mean it when you're hurting.
I know. It's like, also like, John, we can see your house. Like, do you need that much house? What's the carbon footprint of your house there, guy?
I was actually
how
thinking about this.
How about we'll know you're serious when you give up all those books? Those books all have a carbon footprint. What are you buying those for? And that furniture? Look at that.
They decide the exceptions.
Hey,
They're in the fight.
wait. Do you water those plants, John Larson? Do you water those?
So
they're hanging in your house. I don't think it rains in your fucking house, does it? Do you put water in those?
I remember going through this thought experiment and like very briefly, and it was like right when I was leaving Mormonism. I'm working at Wendy's in Rexburg. Rexburg is like 98% Mormon. And I had this manager, really fucking cool guy. He was still, very Mormon, and I wasn't. And I was bitching about City Creek because I really, really wanted to bitch about something. I was bitching about how they had this mall, and I still have my complaints about the mall, right? I think you encourage your members to not make any profit off alcohol, but you're making profit off wine sales and extravagant clothing. I have my complaints about it, but I'm explaining to him, yeah, it's bullshit because there's homeless people in Utah, and my manager's like, okay, yeah, but like, can they never build anything nice? I'm like, yeah, they got all these extravagant buildings, and there's like still people dying of hunger and stuff. And he just asked me this question. I was being a stupid fucking kid, and he's like, okay, but like, so how many of the world's problems have to be solved before the Mormon Church can spend their money in other places? And I thought about it, and it was embarrassing because I was like, fuck, I'm an idiot. You're right. Because the logical conclusion of what I'm trying to get to is that like they should be destitute with everybody else.
Yeah.
Covenant in the temple to obey. It's one of the few covenants that you make, and you
Now
have
we're
to
just full John Larson from here on out.
bow your head and say yes to covenant to follow the law of the gospel. Like according to this definition,
This was Jared's favorite part.
the law of the gospel. Even when Joseph Smith is trying to seduce a young woman, he refers to the law of the gospel. It is ostensibly one of the only 4 ways to get happy, or you have to do all of them, I would guess. But
this
to get
was
happy. So it's really
stupid. This is stupid. Just watch how much he like hypes up this whole law of the gospel thing. Oh my God, he thinks this is the mic drop of a century. This guy, I don't know, like I trust you guys that he was at one point somewhat admirable, but if you were to tell me that after watching just this, I would not believe you. This is stupid.
This is some real sophistry coming up.
very important, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the law of the gospel we would know from going to church is actually a lot of different commandments and laws, right?
Yep.
The most important thing, we're sent on this planet to obey the law of the gospel. It's like the whole purpose.
Yep.
That's not a term even.
What?
He's acting like it's this term that's commonly used by Mormons. What do you mean? Like the law of the gospel, right, John DeLynn? You've heard that phrase before, right? The law of the gospel. No, what do you like? I guess that the rules within the gospel, like that's not a term.
The first law of heaven, as they say.
Okay, so what is it?
So I just
The
googled law of the gospel LDS.
Oh.
Here it is, John. The law of the gospel of Jesus Christ has decreed that every man must repent and be baptized by immersion after the pattern of the law.
Oh, look at John didn't even.
Right? I mean, if this is the whole design of our fucking existence, is to obey this set of rules that they talk about nonstop. Where are they?
All right, so
how many are
you
there?
Retarded.
BYU, the law of the gospel. The law of the gospel. What is the law of the gospel? Ezra Taft Benson, Lorenzo Snow, John. Here they are. They've got it all delineated.
Go ahead.
No pun
I imagine.
Are you actually retarded? You would have to be fucking brain dead to make this stupid fucking claim. Because if you want to get into it, nobody calls it the law of the gospel, first of all. That's that he's intentionally trying to confuse John DeLynn, because John DeLynn's like, what the fuck are you talking about? The law of the gospel.
The fourth
if you want to get into it,
article
that's the third missionary discussion, is the gospel of Jesus Christ. And what are there are 5 elements. It's repentance, baptism by immersion, the gift of the Holy Ghost.
The fourth article of faith.
Endure to the end. There's another one. I can't remember what the first one was, but
to play devil's advocate and give John Larson his due, like, are there internal contradictions within things that the church talks about the law of the gospel? You know, like, are there plot holes? Yes, but this thing where it's like, who even knows what that is? Like, no, I just looked it up. I mean, I just did a search. There's a whole bunch of sources. They tell you what it is. Like, don't pretend like you don't get it. Like, yeah, it's religion, but don't pretend like you don't get it. Of course, he's being a sophist, so he's going to pretend like he doesn't get it. Did Jared go
the best
still?
place to start?
There he is.
Maybe it's with your baptism covenants.
And then as you start going,
John just says it.
It's like, I don't know what the fuck you're saying, man.
Could it be my baptism covenant?
He's like, you're acting like there's no written rules in Mormonism, and I think maybe you're having a fucking stroke.
I think that's funny how John just like, this
baptism
out nonstop. Where are they?
Listen,
All right.
How many are there?
Let
You want
go.
me to play devil's advocate? Like,
Go ahead.
I imagine an apologist is going to say the best place to start maybe is with your baptism covenants.
And then as you start going,
Cracks me up. I just know the answer. All right. That's next
Imagine just
subject.
having ultimate
That's
midwit
funny.
John Dehlin logic circles around you like this.
Yeah, that is embarrassing. Like that's a weird tangent to go on, because that thing's like, like I said, like there's a big criticism to go down the Mormon law of the gospel. Sure, like there's plenty there, because it's a weird religion that has plot holes and is filled with contradictions. Okay, we can point at those. But this, like, what are you even talking about? Thing, like, oh come on.
I'm going to become Mormon out of spite. This was so mind-numbingly stupid that I'm never drinking again.
Yeah, like, I want to pay tithing just to piss off John Larson.
they'll start saying, yeah, but there
This is the next subject. Hold on.
is actually a purer definition and a more refined definition of happiness. And oh, well, you're sinning. Oh, well, you're not obeying the law of the Lord. Oh, well, you're not in a heteronormative relationship. Oh, you haven't gone to heaven yet. So this fallacy, this appeal to purity, makes it so they never have to actually deliver, because nobody can ever be pure enough to actually.
Oh, a lot of these things are just like the next 4 or 5 things. Just
and also like
think about your own worldview and your own people on your own side. Every single one of them. Every single one of them.
The word heteronormative is a religious term.
Oh, absolutely.
Like you're using religious language there, John. Like
it's not even one that he
heteronormative
uses
is a made up word.
particularly well.
It's like not and also like, by the way, like hetero is normal, like literally by definition. It's the normal mode of human sexuality. It's not the only good one. It's not the only okay one. It is the only normal one.
Yeah, there can only be one normal.
What they promise.
I would
good.
love for you to just have a missionary at your door right now and say that to them.
You know, when I
This
talk
is
to
the
the
funny part. This
missionaries-
shows the
Yeah,
disparity between all three of them, because like Kara is dumb enough to think that he just blew her mind. She's just like, whoa. And John Dehlin
listen
is
to
like,
this.
what the fuck is he saying? I don't know where to take it. I really want to give him throw him a bone here, but what the fuck do I do?
Listen to how quick it's like out of both sides of the mouth right here.
First of all, I believe in punching up, not punching down. They're just kids.
No, you
so
don't.
and they're dummies. Besides, they don't know Mormon theology. They don't know
Punching up and punching down.
I don't believe in punching down. They are dummies.
I don't believe in punching down at those fucking idiots.
It's like, I just want you guys to drop your bullshit morality. Like,
I'm
just
far too
drop-
righteous and
like, just-
empathetic to punch down on those morons.
Watch this. We're coming down on you guys and being mean to you because we're dickheads. See how easy that is? You guys could just say, hey, we're dickheads. But no, you have to be passing off as we're better bestest doing morality better than the better bestest. And we're now part
That's
of
because
Patriotism 2.0.
some of us aren't religious.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't believe that I have the corner on empathy, so I don't have a problem being dickheads to you when you're being shitty.
The whole entire reason I think we're out there is because I think the whole community kind of needed just a little bit of asshole lobbed in the middle of it. And that's all there is to it.
Yeah. And if I'm good for anything,
squatting on particular definitions of word or non-definitions of word, keeping them in big
definitions of word, non-definitions of word. Like this is all just one finger pointing out, 3 fingers pointing back.
because that's what we really see with happiness is their definitions constitute a non-definition, because like we pointed out with the first one, just from that one it's not even achievable. I'll see our third one is one we talked.
What if we apply all this to people who transition their gender?
That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying every single one of these things he's bringing up if they stop and look back at at Blue Church, all of the questions are there for you in Blue Church. That's our entire point. Like Blue Church, what are you guys doing with definitions? What are you guys doing with purity? What are you doing with purity spiraling and some of the other things coming up?
We are told that the reason we have to affirm somebody's transition is because of their happiness.
Yeah.
But we have the clinical data that shows us that they're not happier from transitioning.
Fallacy of reification or the reification is a fallacy of ambiguity, where
You
an
know what the
abstraction is treated as if it were a concrete, real event or a physical entity.
An abstraction is treated as real. That's a fallacy. Uh-oh. Don't want to go down that road because I think I can point out some of y'all's abstractions that you treat as real.
Is that like, can you be born in the wrong body?
Mm-hmm.
How does that work?
Oftentimes it happens when we take like verbs or adjectives and turn them into nouns. So we can say he
like woke,
he's saved,
like transing,
right? As in, like it's this state of being, like it has definition. This is a more
that's right after he was just complaining that nothing has definition too.
recent one, and it's called.
This is my favorite one.
The courtier's response, and it is basically in which a respondent to a criticism claims that the critic lacks sufficient knowledge, credentials, or training to pose any sort of criticism whatsoever.
Oh my God.
Oh boy, do we like that fallacy, John Lars.
Wow. Wow.
This is the number
Wow,
one.
you are on the wrong platform to be saying that.
Are you the least self-aware person in the world?
Jeez.
Rebuff that I get from apologists. They will do this.
Try to say something negative about postmodernism without a PhD in postmodernism, and only people who are going to get a PhD in postmodernism are people who love postmodernism. I can read all of it. I can read as much as I've read of it, but I can't say anything bad about it unless I got the credentials.
Yeah.
They will say you did not exercise enough faith. You weren't in the church long enough. You weren't in the inside.
There's a big problem in America that a friend of mine called recently expertitis. So we're going to listen to the experts about this. We're going to. There's a big problem in America that a friend of mine called recently expertitis. So we're going to listen to the experts about this. Everybody's going to stay in their academic lane. So if you want to learn about cultural Marxism, who are you going to have to ask? A cultural Marxist. Are they going to tell you the truth about what its agenda is? Well, yes and no. Mostly no. They mostly distort it and disguise it. But the part that's yes is they tell you openly over and over again, we want a revolution. We want a revolution. But people don't believe them. So we go to these people who have a vested interest in not telling us what the real purpose is. And then that makes it so.
This is half of why James Lindsay's not allowed to talk about critical race theory, because he's supposed to be a PhD in critical race theory to talk about critical race theory, even though he's read more critical race theory than most critical race theorists.
I talk to academics.
I probably have read more Scientology than the average Scientologist, but I am not allowed to speak on it because I'm not a Scientologist.
To PhDs. And they say all the time, oh, you can't understand. You don't really understand it. Because
It's a problem just in general philosophy, even just with basic philosophy. Like you're not allowed to talk crap on anything in that world unless you're some. Well, Dan McClellan, he's
Dan McClellan.
Dan McClellan, you got to be a linguist, which if I could pull out the credentialism on him like I did last time, you're a linguist because you got a PhD that included some linguist stuff in it.
You never went to college.
Yeah, you're not a
you never learned
linguist.
it from the professors. You never learned the correct interpretation of it. And that's the problem. Everybody outside of them says, no, you can't possibly understand that because you didn't get the credentials. You didn't get the degree. So you can see that there's this unwillingness to understand the subject and to put all of the understanding of the subject into the small handful of people who are most likely to distort it for their own purposes.
Distort it for their own purposes, the ones who love it and the ones who see Machiavellian use of it. I mean,
What's the name of the fallacy where once the experts have been proven to be like fucking liars, the people who believe them claim that everybody else was just lucky.
Sam Harris-itis.
Dr. Fauci.
Yeah.
And so there's been this very difficult problem where it's been very hard for people to communicate it.
What we can prove, what we can know. But so many of the times the church are at odds with one another because they only really benefit from forwarding their system, like telling you that you are broken, that you have this toxicness that can only be fixed within
Telling
their
you
system.
that you're broken and telling that
Well,
you're
like,
toxic and telling that you have some whiteness that only you can be fixed if you turn to their experts.
I want to make a meme of, because like, you know, the room with, oh, hi, Mark. We need to do, oh, hi, Marks. That's
Every single thing. Every single thing you guys whine about, you do.
They don't actually benefit by making you a whole person with good information.
You can't ever actually defeat your whiteness. Every single day, you've got to work on your fragility and work on dismantling your privilege.
What we know is best practices. How many times do we have to excommunicate people?
What we know is best practices. What do we know is best practice?
Like Natasha Helfer for just trying to give people good resources to have.
Oh,
Natasha Helfer is not
that's
best
a good
practices.
practice.
I'm going to go ahead and say that's not best practices.
What is Natasha Hoffa's practices? Just jack off all the time? That's the impression.
Jack off all the time and open up your relationship and marriage if you're
smoke weed every day.
Explode your family if you
Coming at all of
want
it.
sexual desires fulfilled.
I saw this meme and it was funny. It's like, my boyfriend's family doesn't let me be around them anymore. And somebody says, what could they possibly have against you? What could his parents possibly have against you? He's like, oh no, his wife and kids. And like talking like it was a Romeo and Juliet thing.
They hate love.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I love that. I mean, just the Jordan Peterson take on that. Like, I really think that is the way to speak. Because, like, he doesn't say it's morally wrong. He doesn't say you'll go to hell or any of that shit. I just like what he says, like, talking about polyamory. It's a poor strategy for long-term happiness.
Yeah, it's
like,
Eric
it's
Weinstein
so cold
calls
and
it
clinical.
suboptimal.
Because, like, yeah, it's not like don't do it. It's none of that, but just like, but if your goal is long-term happiness,
Well, and then
probably not going to find it there.
Once again, on the new drugs and also on trigonometry, listen to Mary Harrington because she's an ex-lefty, ex-lesbian. But one of the things she talks about is Rob Henderson's idea of luxury beliefs, that these things also only work for high-class people, and different ideas like get your feminist job and all that stuff only work if you're having office jobs and all that sorts of stuff. But also these polyamorous families that, guys and whatever can come and go or whatever. It only works for a certain class of people. Like if you're a type of person or a person who has less money or is going to be working blue collar jobs your whole entire life, or sure, anybody can get beyond that. But we all know the truth of the matter is some of us are all just going to be working their butts off. You don't have that luxury belief to go running around town and boinking every dude around and opening up your relationship when you got 3 kids and all that sorts of stuff. It's a luxury belief. It works when you've got a prenup that's going to pay out $600,000 if it doesn't work out.
And also, can you imagine like polyamory in a time before birth control?
No. But that's one of the things Mary Harrington says. It's like one of the things that's like part of our technocratic future. Is part of the future of. It's the very first thing where somebody kind of became a cyborg and weren't what they used to be and could kind of start pretending Did
you guys see the big story about Beethoven and that all of the headlines are burying the lead on?
That his dad isn't his dad?
His dad got cucked.
His dad got cucked.
But it's just funny because like all these stories are like, DNA analysis shows surprising truths or, surprising secrets about Beethoven. And it's like, they're always buried in that thing. It's like, oh yeah, it wasn't his kid. Like, I mean, I guess we don't know the details, but probably Beethoven's mom had an affair and lied to everybody. That's what happened.
One more thing, John, I just want to add is just this notion that I learned in my training, for in my psychology training. There's this idea of the happiness trap, and I don't know that we covered it, but teaching someone to pursue happiness actually has been shown to decrease their happiness. We are not made, as we talked about at the beginning of this episode, just like you're not, how do you be happy? Take heroin, right? How do you be happy? Snort
What
cocaine.
the fuck?
How do you be happy? Snort Adderall. Like, we know how to stimulate the chemicals in your brain to be happy. That's ultimately deadly. I'm going to give a shout out to Noah Rasheta and the Secular Buddhism podcast, because one of the core elements of this is now teaching
out, but it's like,
the words that Buddhism begins with.
Life is pain.
Life is suffering. Yeah, exactly.
Life is suffering.
Exactly.
This is so much of this stuff is
philosophy
stuff Jordan Peterson's been covering. I mean, a million places has been covering it since forever, but now these guys are finally happening onto it.
To have you living your healthiest and happiest and best life, start with the teaching that life is, and then the wise farmer says, "Who knows what is good and what is bad?" And the wise farmer responded and said, "Who knows what is good and what is bad?" The idea is that when we're constantly evaluating everything, trying to label everything, trying to judge everything, we're taking a lot of the joy out of life, but we're also setting ourselves up.
Critical theory. Look at what critical theory is putting all these kids into, and putting you into, and putting everybody. Critical theory
for expectation, because if you think things are going great, well, then they're going bad, and then you're frustrated. And when they're going bad, and then
you're supposed to be frustrated with it because status quo or being happy with it. Marcuse said people needed to feel the pain. It was a bad thing that people were so comfortable in their capitalism and so comfortable in their society that gave them, ski-doos on the weekend and grilling time and all that sort of stuff. They needed to feel the pain. We need ESG. I saw this thing that said it was what do they call it? It was
I was just thinking about it because, because I always make the case about this is church versus church, but all the ways that I prefer Mormon church versus woke church. Mormon church, we grew up with, and it's something that, like, the older I get, the more I appreciate. Count your blessings. That Mormon thing about count your blessings, and that's a really good message, especially when you juxtapose it with the woke faith, which is enumerate your intersections of oppression and never let them go.
Yeah. Let me see here. They called ESG engineering scarcity globally.
So, that is one of those things where it's like nobody's fucking talking about Sri Lanka. You notice how little, I read the BBC every day. They barely talk about Sri Lanka. And the thing is, that didn't used to be the case. I remember 10 to 20 years ago, the BBC talked about Sri Lanka a lot because of the civil war and stuff. There's a lot of shit going down in Sri Lanka. Almost none of the mainstream news is even discussing it because it all happened because of ESG bullshit.
Yeah.
The country is fucking folded because of ESG policies. They were the experiment and it failed. And so nobody's talking about it.
So right at the end of this, I can't believe there's just two more catchphrases they said. One of them was just, I think, more of that, call it like toxic.
You can get caught in this loop of toxic evaluation instead of just living in the moment.
Critical theory is toxic evaluation. That's a great word for it, John Lynn.
Toxic
You should learn what critical theory is. Because
he just said critical theory? He said
No, he said we should just avoid falling into this. I'm calling it critical theory because that's what critical theory is. But let me see here. Present your screen window. This is James Lindsay's thing on woke that he put out this week. Although we already said it, it's almost exactly what Flip said last week, and we've always said woke is easy. No, you don't have to say something racist Zelf on the shelf guy. Woke is having critical consciousness. Critical consciousness, the cult belief that everything in society is designed to oppress you, and the only way to see the truth is to become a Marxist using critical theory. Simple as that. PSA, anyone who tells you that isn't the correct definition of woke does not want you to look up the definition of critical consciousness and critical theory.
Yeah. No, that's one of the things. Like, I mean, it's one of those challenges. Like, I mean, I can't ever get people to do it. It's like, pull out your phone, go to Google, put in critical consciousness, start reading. It's the simplest thing. Well, it's like, I don't know if you saw, like, I think I screenshotted it for you guys, but I commented on a Dan McClellan thing, you know, and I said, like, you know, man, think about critical theory. The guy's like, well, critical theory wouldn't even apply to the Bible. So I just immediately linked him to critical biblical studies. Bada bing! It's
Dan
the simplest thing in the world.
In his intro video, he says that he's using critical theory. He says it under his breath. It's in there. He says using critical theory to.
Because in reality, we don't know there's something.
Stupid things started cutting out, but there was just one.
Why is
He
that
gets
being so
into
shitty?
It was when I was
That
recording
they're
it. I didn't
all
know.
corrupted by Satan, and then
You
that's
recorded live and it recorded all
so-
the artifacts of the.
Yeah, let me just speed it up and we'll get through the last little bit because they talk about
that
something.
they're all corrupt.
A few final thoughts. One thing I want to say, just for those who don't know the history of the Mormon Church and the mental health profession, if you were to read the book Mormon Doctrine in the 1960s and 70s and 80s, Kara, written by Bruce R. McConkie, do you know what it would say about the mental health profession generally?
Yeah, that they're all corrupted by Satan, and then that's the intellectuals and the feminists and the psychology professors and people.
Yeah.
They're all on the side.
Based.
Yeah, basically for decades and decades, you know, legitimate psychologists, psychiatrists, mental health professionals, like today in Scientology, were condemned as evil, liberal.
They were keeping you out of the longhouse. That's where they're keeping you. And now we're all square in the longhouse.
What were the ones
you
that
say, Delin?
What about the psychologists that were constantly diagnosing people with suppressed memories of being raped by their fathers? Were those ones evil and liberal? Or are we doing that thing where we say that progressivism is always what turned out to be right?
Well, you were also talking about how in that other episode with the mental health parents that they were talking about how everything could have a diagnosis nowadays. And how he says, oh, sometimes I was a workaholic and sometimes, Mark, you were anxious. Oh, that could be stuff. And like part of the
Also,
whole thing
my kid wanted to cut his dick off, but that's not a mental health issue.
Let's give a diagnosis to and territorialize everything with the diagnosis. Chris Williamson had this guy on recently. Maybe I could pull it up. It's probably too far up there, but he talks about whenever he starts talking to people, he finds out they're on like 50 different medications and they don't even know what half the medications are there for. He starts saying, what's this one? What's this one? What's this one? And they're getting all that crap from mental health professionals.
You know, bad people, and the church members should stay away from them. I have one final question I want to ask both of you, Kara and John Larson. There's this idea of depressed realism. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but the idea is that people who view the world realistically, on average, tend to be a little bit less happy than those who kind of view the world unrealistically, but with kind of rose.
We pulled that one up a while back from Steve Stewart Williams. I couldn't find it today, but they said people who actually realistically know what's actually going on with the climate are actually more optimistic about the future rather than less optimistic. But we got all the way through them, and there was so much.
Wow.
There was still, I didn't pull any from that with that.
Hey, you didn't do
couple.
the mental health one, huh?
But they were, I mean, that's like 5 episodes, each of them like 3 hours, and I wanted to bang my head against the wall.
Do you think that there will be enough stupid put out starting tomorrow for us to fill up another 2 hours next week?
That always is.
Yes. It drives me nuts because I actually kind of want to do some of the other stuff. Like Jonathan said, he wants us to review everything all the time, all whatever.
Oh, I need to watch. Is that streaming anywhere on any of the major streaming?
Jonathan slipped us a clip. If you can watch it, you can
It's-
look up on the
I love that movie. The
Right.
whole internet is turning
Jonathan
on
didn't
it
do
because they're woke. Like because it won because like, oh, it's this big Asian thing, but don't think about that. I fucking love the movie.
But
we'll just watch it and watch it straight forward.
I'll
and
try to
see
make
if
sure to
we-
watch it. I've got a friend at work that has put in his notice, and he's driving me crazy to watch it, so I got to watch it. But I wanted to. I mean, I already mentioned to you guys, but I want to mention on the thing because I've been watching The Sopranos. And
Oh,
I
you're
love
still
that.
going? Nice.
I'm still going. Like I haven't finished season 2 yet. Because Sopranos, it's one of those shows where like I don't want to miss anything, but I get distracted, so I end up like going over the same 30-second thing like 5 times because I want to catch every word. But I just love there's the scene where the kid is getting confirmed and they're driving in the car and the kid's been reading German philosophers at work. And he says, God is dead. And Tony Soprano says, even if God is dead, you're still going to kiss his ass. Which I think is like really good philosophy. That's like, because I'm an atheist, but I feel that way, you know, like in that grand scheme, like, you know, you know, it's another way of putting where did you get that, Chris, from the reality always bats last? Because that's another way of putting that same idea that like I really like, you know, it's like there's no getting away from nature. There's no getting away from universe. There's
Where
no getting
did I
away
hear
from
that first?
The second law of thermodynamics, you know, like there's just no getting away from this stuff.
I can't remember exactly who I heard it first from. I mean, it's spread around a lot now, so probably who I heard it from probably wasn't the first either. But
but because that's the same idea. But I like Tony Soprano's way of putting that. It's really succinct.
Tony Soprano has some fantastic one-liners like that.
Oh my gosh, what you got to start listening for in the show, Flip, which is one of the funniest things about the whole show, is their misnomers. Like you got to listen to how straight they play using the wrong words because you'll miss it. You'll miss it.
I watched one earlier today that I can't even think of what it was, but it was something I caught. But like, they just do it all the time.
Excellently funny. Like nobody would ever do that because if any other show did it, they'd emphasize, you know. They'd emphasize the obvious misuse of a word. But in that show, it'll be like he's dead serious in a serious anger moment, in a serious moment where somebody might get killed or die and misuse a word entirely. And you would
I remember now. I watched the one today where he's talking about because the guy who got hit by the car and paralyzed. And Tony says like he's pissing into a cathode ray tube.
Yeah, there's times where it's just like funny, but there's other times where it's like in the middle of him getting mad or being toxic or blowing up at somebody and he just misuses the word in the middle of it, but you don't notice because he's still doing the full perfect angry acting, you know, like he's still mad and he's misusing a word. It's so funny. Like they put that stuff in there everywhere. That stuff cracks me up.
Like, so I've been working my way through it, and like, because you know, a lot of times when I binge stuff, I kind of do it passively. But this show's too good to watch passively. You can't do it.
Yeah.
And like, because that thing's like, because I know because of cultural references, the famous ending that made everybody mad. But like, I'm all excited because I'm like, I wonder what the sentence he'll be cut off in the middle of will be. I don't know.
Good. It's a good ending because I suggest watching some people kind of break down some of the imagery and stuff because it's actually pretty obvious in the end. Yeah. But you'd have to like pick up context from like the whole season going up into it. But I mean, I guess because you already know the end of it. But the bottom line of it is he dies.
Like
he dies right there. And people try to play it like, oh, it's left open or not. But no, it's not open. There's so many hints. And now that you know that, you can stop and listen way before how many times they reference, what if it just all goes black at some stupid time? You know, they reference that a million times.
Well, I'm excited. I haven't been this interested in a TV show in a long time. It's funny. There's a show that came out almost 25 years ago.
Oh, it's the best. It's still one of the best.
I haven't finished it either. I've only watched the first season. And it's because exactly what you said. It's not one you can watch passively. So I can't play video games while I watch it. I have to.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's the thing. Is like I almost exclusively listen to TV while playing video games. But like, God damn it, Sopranos is too good. I have to pay attention.
The other thing is too is like beyond just paying attention. Like if you go and like pick stuff up on the internet, how like some extra things actually have extra context that this was referencing this was referencing this, and like I said, it's just little moments of absolute pure sociopathy, and sometimes you're not catching up on what exactly the sociopathy is, and sometimes it's fun to see other people break down just how horrible they are being in certain situations, and
like also it's self-centered. It's like you say, where like it's got like this Beethoven-like quality that like you can stop and start it anywhere, and it's great. Yeah, like any little segment is filled with something to look at or pay attention to, or to go back over and see again. Like, it's really
but I think we made mistakes when we first watched it, because when we first watched it live, I mean, it was such kind of a new show like that to be so realistic, like that type of realism in the show. We were waiting for who's going to get whacked. So we were looking for big moments and stuff like that. And they come, but it's really not about that. It really totally isn't. And that's
Yeah.
what's brilliant about
Oh,
it.
the other thought I had that is like just weird. I don't know what the idea is. Just the weirdness of life. But like part of what made The Sopranos so groundbreaking is its realism. And part of the realism is that like a lot of it is set in a strip club, and so it's HBO,
Oh,
and so
yeah.
they really have naked women. But none of those naked women have real boobs. All the boobs are fake. It's all fake. So like there's like this kind of level of like this, yeah, the fakeness is the realism. You know?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
I'm crazy about that show. That show's so good. There's so many scenes apart. The only stuff I don't like about it, which is still fine, but I just don't like this in general. I don't like dream sequences. And they use dream sequences here and there, and I'm not crazy.
you
about
That
hate
must
that.
come up
those-
later because I don't think I've had. Well, there's only one that I've seen.
Do you
Is
hate those
that
in
one that-
video games?
Yeah, I hate it in anything. I hate
hate
it
them
in
so
comedy. I hate it in
In video games, it's like this thing for like the last 15 years. In every video game, you either have to have a dream sequence or like a drug hallucination sequence
yeah.
where you are not free to move around very much. You can't shoot anything, and it's
Like-
slow.
I think it's
hate
still
it.
something that, like, I mean, like if it's used well,
yeah,
you know, it can be well. But the problem is
Used
like
well, I
it's
still
a
don't love
cheap
it.
out. That's the thing. Is like, yeah, the dream sequence is a cheap out.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
that's
like
the
get
thing, like, I've
another
been having weird dreams
episode
lately.
and kind of do some exposition without really doing exposition. And they don't do a ton of it in Sopranos, but there's 2-3 episodes that are like the episode
Oh,
of
yeah.
like the Fly episode in
Breaking Bad.
Breaking Bad. That's kind of like doing a dream sequence, but it's not. Like that's important.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
it's
I
important
like
to
that
show
episode.
what it's not a dream, first off, and secondly, it was important to show just how tediously specific that guy was. And
Yeah.
you know,
But yeah, and also like talking about the Sopranos and Tony's mom, man, that hits close to home.
oh yeah, I was thinking that one was gonna ring
Yeah,
a
no,
bell with
just
you
the
a
whole
little
thing where
bit.
it's like there's one side of her is playing everybody against each other, and then the other side of her is like, why isn't everybody getting along? Like, yeah, that's my mom.
And then
alright.
she's the victim too. Like, oh,
yeah,
I'm the
all that,
victim.
and also like, nobody loves me, nobody cares about me. I wish I could just die. Like, yeah, that's my mom.
You want to know what the worst thing in the world is I mean, I guess it's happened before, but the Sopranos movie absolutely sucked. Like, don't watch.
Oh,
the
there was a movie?
after. There's a movie that just got released a couple years ago.
It's a prequel, right?
Yeah, and it sucked ass.
And then I guess there was a video game that got terrible reviews. They said like the acting and story were good, but the game itself sucked.
I don't know about the game, but I can tell you, if you guys see the whole thing and see the movie, I have a belief on what happened to that movie, and I believe 100% that movie got screwed up by DEI stuff because there's a black guy in the movie, and the black guy in the movie has this weird role with Tony's uncle. And you watch the whole thing, I got done with the movie and I was like, that black guy was supposed to be Tony. Like this story would have made sense if that black guy was Tony, but they decided to remove Tony from it and make a black guy be the center character. And I can tell if you watch that movie and you know The Sopranos and you've seen everything before it, watch that movie and tell me I'm wrong. Like, I am 100% sure that
I like
they
this show
rewrote
enough.
Tony's role to be just some random black guy.
I like the show enough that I'd probably watch the movie just for completeness, although with the caveat.
Because what happens, like Tony, you might not notice, you will notice, but it's like people get real specific about everything ever mentioned in The Sopranos. They get really specific. And he always mentions this uncle he absolutely loved this uncle, but that uncle's not in the show anywhere. He's just this uncle that he references. So he's just a reference the whole entire time. So then the movie's about this referenced uncle who got him like into the game and all that stuff. And so there's all this stuff where that uncle, Tony's supposed to be old enough. They partially think that they also wanted to cast his kid, like James Gandolfini's kid in it. And his kid was too young to be that part. And so, we'll cast his kid in it and have him play Tony. And then we'll have this other random black guy be the 20-year-old. But the whole thing would make so much more sense if those were the incidences that happened with Tony starting in the gang, starting in the mafia with his
This must be
uncle.
a character that hasn't been mentioned yet, because like I've met Uncle June, and then they've
He's not in it. He's not in it. He references it, and he references it in passing.
Oh no, because like
his favorite
that's what I'm
uncle.
saying is well, that's what I'm saying is because like I mean maybe it comes up later because like
He's
there's
dead.
Uncle
He's long
June,
dead.
and then they've referenced that there's the retarded guy that they hid away. That's one thing they mentioned, that he had an uncle that they hid away because of that. Because
No, this is his uncle that got him into the game. And it doesn't
I'm
make any
excited.
sense because that movie is about him when he's a teenager, so he's not yet in the game. And then he gets this random black guy back in the 60s or 70s when the mafia was super racist into the game. And then there's all this stuff that happens, but it would have been so perfectly sociopathic too, because so much of what happens is like he ends up fighting and brawling and sleeping with his uncle's wife, the black guy does. But if that was Tony doing that, it would put such a Tony thing on the way he talked about that guy through the past. And the way he idolized him as his uncle who he always loved. But then you go and see what actually happened, and you go and see that it actually was all toxic, just like it was with his mother. But that whole time he's idolizing him later in the future, it's because that's just what he does. Like later he then says how great somebody was who he screwed over or did something sociopathic with. It would have fit perfectly. The story would make sense. It would have been all good and great, and it would have. And I guarantee it makes no sense because one, they wanted to put DEI in it, and two, maybe cast his son. They wanted his son to be in it.
Yeah.
I can tell you, watch that show, you'll see a rewrite. There was a rewrite in it.
I wonder if there's anything in the lore, in the production lore. Anyway, did we get through it?
Yeah, we got through it, and I gotta walk this nut bag down.
That's a very dog. And then Jared only sleeps 4 hours a night.
Let's try to
He
do a
eats once
funner
a
one
week
next
and
week
sleeps
because
4 hours a night.
I don't have overtime tomorrow. I'm good.
Wait, and you're eating again. Did you make it all 7
did you have
days?
food again?
No, I didn't make it. I just did 5.
Just 5.
Just
I will
5.
never do 5 days in my life.
I don't think I've done 1.
I'll never do 2. Yeah, I mean, I've done something you can consider
It
like.
wasn't nearly as bad as you would think it was, but for whatever reason, on the 5th day, I got home and I went fucking insane. I felt like I was drunk, and my wife was like, "Your eyes are glazed over. You need to eat something." I think
I'll
it's
go ahead.
probably gotta
Never
work
try that
something.
unless I get a medical requirement.
I felt great. I felt great until that day 5, and I was like, "Nope."
You were euphoric. Maybe you had that thing like
Yeah, I'll never do that.
because like is there a thing where like if you don't eat enough for long enough you get the reverse thing like what do they call it? I forget what it's called, like one of the last stages of hypothermia is they call it like paradoxical undressing.
Well,
like
but
one of the last stages of hypothermia is you take off all your clothes. And it's completely paradoxical.
I imagine this makes. I imagine it all makes sense evolutionarily because, like, it's actually like a very, very new period of human development where we have a surplus of calories. So I imagine our bodies have probably evolved to the point where, like, we can go days without food with a shit ton of energy to get more food. It's just that day I was at home with like
I will say
surrounding me, and at that point your body's just gonna be like, what the fuck? Why aren't you eating?
I think
I kept
roid
you
rage.
energetic until right now.
I think the concept of roid rage doesn't really happen. I don't know. I've never tried this stuff, but I think it's hangry. What they call hangriness is people go on these diets and you get extreme diet, and then when you get hungry, you get angry and frustrated and super. And I think that's part of a hunter's need to, like, you got to have something to push you over the top to go get that and kill that thing or something.
Totally.
But that's just my belief on that, although it's probably true. Let's try to do something fun. They dropped so many stupid things this week we're talking about or looking at, but let's try to do the everywhere, all the time, everything, whatever.
Yeah.
And talk about entertainment stuff again, and hopefully these guys won't drop 75 podcasts in the middle.
Do we know where it's streaming? Is it streaming anywhere?
No, look in our thread. Look up at the thread.
Oh,
You can
that's
watch
right.
it
You
in the
said
thread.
that.
Yeah.
That's
so
right.
watch it from there. It's probably streaming somewhere though. But anyway, cool hanging. Thanks for talking.
All right.
Talk to y'all later.
Yeah, man.
Bye bye.
Let's see it.
Let's see it.